Hello again, everybody, and welcome inside the Howitzer and Buzzsaw Show. I am George the Howitzer Gerbo.
And I am Mike the Buzzsawsty.
Sports Talk back with you. The equinox is in full effect. Sports all over the place, every league, everything is going on at the same time. We love it. We know you love it. And we're here to talk about some of the biggest headlines that have come out from some of those sports here in the moments ahead, as there's never a shortage of asinity, as Mike always likes to say.
The sports world has been very, very asinine recently, and that means a new episode of the Howitzer and Buzzsaw Show had to happen here. Of course, a lot to talk about, but it's also Halloween week. So I'm going to talk about sports, cover sports, and then take my daughter trick-or-treating on Halloween night, as we're doing it right in my neighborhood. And she is Peppa Pig, for anyone who's familiar.
There you go. Okay.
She is Peppa Pig, and then my baby daughter, who's only 4 months old, is a goose, who fit in with her nickname of Lucy Goose, which just plays off the name. So that's what they are being for Halloween, for anyone who cares. Maybe just me, but I'm all that matters in their life. Maybe their mother as well, of course. And we're going to enjoy trick-or-treating. But also, yes, the sports world is very, very asinine these days. It is the culmination of everything under the sun. You could argue this is the best sports period on the overall.
It's now in the spring, right? Like those are
sure. You could argue, you could argue spring. You could certainly argue when March Madness starts.
March is fun, yeah,
for sure. But this would be the other argument. I probably would lean here, even though I prefer the summer and spring weather. I'm happy right now. I do like Halloween. We're gonna get into appreciating Thanksgiving before Christmas, of course, and I will say that while we have Thanksgiving coming up, we have Christmas to follow, and we're getting into the full holiday season, that I feel like Halloween is getting kind of blown by this year more than normal. Thanksgiving often gets disrespected, and I always want to defend it, but Halloween normally gets some love, and I feel like it's not getting enough love this year. So I'm going to bring Peppa Pig out. We're going to trick or treat. We're going to bring in some candy to the house, and that's one of my rants, that Halloween's not getting enough love. And there are some places that are actually moving Halloween to a different day because they think it's going to rain. That's a problem. That should be against the law. You just deal with trick-or-treat night, however God intended to be that year. So whatever the weather is, whatever day of the week it falls on, whatever's going on in the world that day, doesn't matter. Trick-or-treat night should be on Halloween night, and earn your candy. That's what I will tell the kids out there. Earn your candy. I don't care. Rain or shine, snow. I would go all over the neighborhood with snow on driveways, jump from house to house back in the day, fill up 2 pillowcases. But Halloween night needs to be when trick-or-treating is. No other night is acceptable for the candy. But Halloween needs its love, as yes. We're here to talk sports, but I had to give Halloween its just due.
Mike is a ardent defender of the fall holidays, as we all know.
100%. Got to respect them. Respect them all, for sure.
You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. That includes on Spotify, TuneIn, Amazon, and more. Just search Howitzer or Howitzer Buzzsaw on your favorite podcast app. Also, shout out to the Hyphen Podcast Group, Morgantown, West Virginia-based podcast collective that we are proud to be a part of, and its leader, fearless leader, Kellen B. Conley, whose music you hear right here each and every time on the HBS. Check out hyphenpodcastgroup.com and on socials.
I kind of wonder what Kellen's being for Halloween. I feel like he's an adult who still dresses up every now and then, so...
Some riff on Spider-Man. Who knows?
It's probably Spider-Man. It's probably a riff on Spider-Man. Maybe Venom. I would kind of like to see Kellen be Venom. I could see him maybe do a heel turn on the Spider-Man normal costume and be Venom for a year.
I got you.
Yeah, I wonder what Kellen's doing. I've yet to dress up with my daughter. Maybe I could get back into it because she's dressing up. But I don't know if anything's going to beat Peppa Pig. We did have a Halloween parade at a nearby neighborhood that I took her to. It was too loud for her, but otherwise.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A lot of candy there. Kind of a rigged Halloween costume contest. They just handed out some numbers and then called a number an hour later. Nobody came by to look at anyone's costume.
It wasn't a contest. It was a raffle, basically.
Well, you go over to the table. They give you a number. They ask what number you want for the kids. Then you do the parade, and at the end, you get your treat. And then you just randomly started calling off and said, "Hey, number 24 won."
But no, that's a drawing. That's not even competitive at that point.
But nobody ever even looked at the kids' costumes. And my baby daughter was in a stroller, so you had to actually come over to see that she was a goose. It was a very rigged
raffle.
It was a very rigged contest, and I will argue it to no end for her. I'm my kid's defense attorney forever. But yeah, it was a rigged contest, but nonetheless, we had a parade. So we're gonna do trick or treating. We had a parade. We are saying no to candy corn here in the Osti household, which is a staple of the season as well. But Halloween needs more love. Halloween needs more love. We're so focused on all the asinine news in the sports world that nobody's giving you the funny take of this candy versus that candy, or the top candy lineup, or whether or not you like candy corn. And of course, like Mike Leach, rest in peace, I hate candy corn, something fierce. But George, because of everything else we're going to talk about on the show and all the drama in the NBA with the gambling scandal, the moments of the World Series, and now trying to grab some ratings with the Sydney Sweeney video to intro you to a World Series game when they shouldn't need it, but they somehow do, based on the ratings with an LA team in there and a Toronto team. And you get the coaching carousel in college football that is more active than ever before. So we're not getting the full love for Halloween. We're not getting the Halloween hot takes. Maybe I'll give you my top candy lineup here by the end of this show, but just have to give Halloween some love before we get fully into this.
My Christmas decorations will be out before you know it, as always. All right, let's start where
just not before Thanksgiving. Thank you.
No, I got to put them up before Thanksgiving. That's when the nice weather is. I don't turn them on. I get them in the yard. Admittedly, I don't turn them on until like the week of Thanksgiving. So,
yeah, as long as they're not turned on. There's a neighbor that's turning on some lights. That's turning on lights.
No, I've increasingly gone out and stuck them in the yard just because I don't like to deal with it in the bad weather. So, let's start. Mike mentioned asininity. A lot of that these days, years surrounds the National Basketball Association. Once again, here we are. Adam Silver's league in the crosshairs again, and it's not just normal.
Kawhi and the Clippers got to be thrilled. Totally overshadowed.
Yeah, it's not just normal stupidity of its players and crazy things. They've now drawn the interest and ire of the federal government as part of a multi-state, wide-ranging illegal gambling ring, including sports gambling malfeasance, but also charges of illegal poker games that were orchestrated and held that involve celebrities and NBA players that were rigged from the get-go with adaptations such as X-ray technology built into poker tables, playing cards that, when viewed with special glasses, would reveal the card's identity, even if the card was face down to people.
Clever stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, across a spectrum involving multiple mafia-linked crime families, and specifically as it relates to our purposes for sports, the current head coach, Basketball Hall of Famer Chauncey Billups, from his time as a member of the Detroit Pistons and world champion, and others including Damon Jones, former Cleveland Cavalier, and Terry Rozier, who's been a figure that we've talked about here previously. It's been under investigation as it relates to the sports betting aspect of this investigation. But now, just as the season opens, within the first week of the season, an authority no less serious than the Federal Bureau of Investigation has now laid this at the feet of these NBA players and Adam Silver's league that already looked mismanaged in regards to the Kawhi Leonard situation. And now here we are with this. Billups has been suspended indefinitely, as of course has Rozier. Damon Jones is no longer in the league. So I kind of guess the question, where do you go from here? But it's something that, if this, and there were 30 different people, tied up, arrested, indicted with this this level here, this new level of escalation by the by the DOJ and the FBI. And you've got to imagine, when we talk about Jonte Porter, who was, thrown out for betting on games, former Toronto Raptor. It does not get any lighter, Mike. It continues to get deeper and deeper. And now when we're just going from the normal kind of things we've talked about before, gambling and betting, we'll get into kind of some of the ramifications of the leagues and whatnot, and these partnerships with these gambling entities. When you get, a name like Chauncey Billups, who was actively a coach, Hall of Fame player, to be involved in orchestrating something like this and reporting by a bunch of people, where he's invited other NBA players to essentially, be marks and get, fleeced in these illegal poker games, including players like Kevin Garnett and other names that have been thrown around, other, legendary players that were, snookered, were cheated.
Well, and not even just the poker game, the illegal poker game, though, which sounds like it could be a movie someday, but being accused of giving tips on which player is going to play in which game, and tipping off that Damon Jones tipped off allegedly that LeBron James wasn't going to play in a game, and Chauncey Billups apparently told different sharks out there that, hey, I'm going to run this lineup out there, or this player is not going to play. And who else knows that more than anybody but a head coach?
Yeah.
This is almost worse with him being active head coach than if this came out when he played. Not that it would have been great then with his name, but having a head coach involved, especially on the tip side, that there's going to be players not playing, or this player may play, or this player may not, and kind of really finagling the injury report there. And the Blazers were accused of tanking multiple seasons. That has been their whole plan since Chauncey Billups came aboard, because they're clearly rebuilding. They bring Damian Lillard back, but he's sitting out the year. They actually look like they could be ahead of schedule and are kind of a competitive team before this happened, when Chauncey Billups was arrested at 6 a.m. And who knows what this does now to their trajectory, but they've had solid drafts while they've been tanking. And no one's even really criticized them for tanking. That's kind of the plan in the NBA. It's okay to tank. It's a kind of a secret that everyone says out loud, that, okay, you're going to trust the process with the Sixers. It didn't work for them, but certain NBA franchises just, you're going to tank. Certain small markets, especially. If you don't have a star, if you don't have a crew, it's almost a good idea to tank. And that's what they've been doing as they're rebuilding. But then to have Billups involved, already kind of knowing that they were trying to lose, and have a head coach involved, that it feels like maybe he was trying to help people out with prop bets and make some money off of his team intentionally trying to lose while they're tanking. That makes this feel even dirtier than just, say, players involved, just from what we've experienced over the years. But George, the issue also is, and the reason why the NBA and basketball is so heavily involved in more gambling scandals than other sports, not that it hasn't been a problem in other sports, but more than other sports, is because it's easier to kind of fix an NBA game. It's easier to fix a basketball game. Going back to the 70s, there have been scandals throughout college basketball and the NBA of players being accused of fixing games. Look at what happened at Boston College, for example. There was a 30 for 30 off of that. And then going into the
New York City high school leagues back
New
in
York
the
City
in
high
the
school
day.
leagues, but even referees in the NBA, of course, in the early 2000s, the Western Conference Finals has a stain on it. The Sacramento Kings and Chris Webber to this day say that they got jobbed out of that series. You get the Porter situation from a year or so ago, when he's basically exiled out of the league because of his own scandal, and now you get this. And we also find out that Terry Rozier was cleared by the NBA and then played for a while. And now the FBI comes in, and even though it's different levels of investigation, of course, the FBI can do more in an investigation than the NBA could, so they could find out more. But the NBA allowed him to play and cleared him, knowing there was some issue, having a tip go through off a sports betting app that immediately looked shady, and they looked into it and kept letting him play. And who knows what he was doing in those other games. A lot of this involved prop betting. And even though, you let in with the the poker game, and that might be a bigger deal for the country, for overall news, and maybe for a movie someday. But as far as the NBA, to me, the bigger issue is what these players are accused of with
Integrity of
these
the game.
injury reports, and maybe trying to fix games, the prop bets, trying to let somebody know, hey, I'm going to start this player in this game, or this player is not going to play, and go ahead and bet the under, trying to force the under in certain games. That's what really could cause the NBA some problems. I do personally, maybe this is an unpopular opinion here or a hot take in a way, as much as everyone's freaking out, the NBA got over the referee scandal. The NBA got over the scandal with Porter. The NBA is going to get over this, going to be fine as a league. People are still going to watch. Money is still there. Look at the TV deals. Look at what NBC had to pay to get the rights now. Look at how popular their coverage even is. Look at the stars around the league all over the world. MVPs are all over the world. It's probably impossible for an American-born player to win one of these coming up, and they haven't in the last several years. So I don't think, to steal a phrase from Brian Windhurst, who's been covering this throughout the last couple of weeks, I don't think this is going to rock the NBA at its core, that it's going to ruin the league, it's going to crash ratings, it's going to cost tons of money, it's going to just kill the league and kill the vibe. There may be some fans who never go back and do feel some type of way, but I don't feel it's going to do all of that. Doesn't mean it's not a big deal. I don't feel it's going to kill the league, though, and provide any death nail to the league. We'll talk about what it maybe will do to these individuals and where the league does go from here in a moment. But on that end, I don't think it's going to kill the overall league. There's already less venom today than there was a week ago when this news initially broke, and more will certainly come out, and then more venom will come out. But I don't think this is going to officially kill the league. I think the league will be fine. But basketball is just easier to fix, easier to be involved in gambling, easier to be vulnerable to gambling scandals, because our overall sports world is heavily in bed with gambling companies. And I don't really have a problem with that in general, because, George, I think the genie is out of the bottle. I don't think you can do anything about that. However, there's a reason why these scandals happen more often in basketball, in the NBA, and in college basketball. I'm sure is going to endure some of this coming up than the other sports. It's much easier to fix an NBA game, certainly a prop bet, certainly force an under at the end, especially when a team's tanking, than it is to try to do anything similar in other sports. I mean, of course, the Black Sox scandal exists in Major League Baseball, which is the most infamous, maybe, tank job or fix job or gambling scandal. Of course, Pete Rose as well, but that's for just in general outside of one player. But in terms of trying to fix games outside of Pete Rose betting individually and what he did as a person, there's even, discrepancies in whether or not that was fixed or not. I will go to my grave saying that Shoeless Joe Jackson maybe took some money, but was actually trying to win those games. When you hit almost 400 in a World Series, you're not tanking, you're not fixing, you're not trying to lose when you hit almost 400 in a World Series. So it's hard to get a hit at any level. And when you're hitting 375, you're not trying to lose. But when you look at some of the clips floating out there of Terry Rozier, Le'Veon Bell actually put out the funniest clip and had the tweet of the whole scandal. We look at some of those videos, it looked like he was definitely trying to lose with how he was playing towards the end of those games. So I don't think this kills the league. I don't think this rocks the NBA at its core. However, it's certainly not good. And I'm not surprised the NBA, with how much we are in bed in the sports world with gambling, has now had another scandal potentially impact them and rock them and have it to be something they're having to deal with. Because, again, it is easy to fix games and maybe fix a prop bet at minimum in these games. So do you get rid of prop betting if you're the NBA? Where do you go from here?
And we're faced with, and so kind of the big thing that sticks out here is it's the most embattered that Commissioner Adam Silver has been. comes into
Yeah,
the
when you look at
league.
the Clippers, this back to back, I've already seen some fans. He's losing favor. It does not look like he's
Yeah.
as popular as he once was when he was Iron Fist on Donald Sterling, and
Mhm.
everyone unanimously loved him
Comes
and
into the
agreed with that
league,
decision. But
leads the
it's
kind of
slowly
crusade against
waning.
Donald Sterling. Yep.
It's slowly waning. Even how TNT was handled, and everyone loved that. And yeah, we're still getting the studio show on ESPN,
Mhm.
but there were some that were upset on how that was handled. There are some that are even upset that he's, saving the WNBA almost as a child of his in the league, but how that's being handled, how that league's run. He's not the commissioner of that league, but of course the NBA is very involved what's going on with the WNBA.
Mhm.
A lot of controversy and very polarizing on whether or not the NBA should be helping out the WNBA or not, because they lose money every year and he is helping them out. That's some fans feeling maybe he shouldn't be doing that. But then you get here, the way he's handling this. There are multiple examples over the years where he slowly loses popularity. And if you look at an approval rating like a politician, I imagine right now that Adam Silver's is as low as it's maybe ever been. And he's young. I don't think he's going anywhere. He's done an overall good job. But depending on how some of this is handled, I would not be surprised if you get some announcement that he has some succession plan in the next 5 years, because he's going to have to get out of there soon, or else this is going to get really bad. He is the commissioner presiding over all of this. And there's a lot of scandals happening recently. It's not like there weren't scandals prior to him, but scandals are covered more heavily than they were in the past, so it looks worse.
And the two factors being, you're kind of getting enlightened to the whole, two different pots here in terms of Kawhi Leonard and the deal with aspiration and the no-show contract and everything like that. You're getting into a realm where there's a lot of owners who are like, hey, some of us are already kind of doing this.
Yeah,
And so
commissioner works for the
you
owners.
you would have
Yeah.
ownership on, in theory, it's me speaking theoretically, on Silver's side. In that case, as bad of a black eye that it looks, and Silver's already made contradictory statements about what he knew about aspiration and when he knew it, not to sound like Watergate there. And then, but when we go to this, Mike, it's when you get ownership and the relationship between owners, in the NBA's case, they're called the Board of Governors, and its commissioner becomes fraught when the owners feel that their livelihoods, as lucrative as they can be, become threatened. And if you've got a product that is being put out that lacks integrity, or at least has the perception that it would lack integrity, and as you pointed out, basketball has long been suspect to this. Baseball will be number two, but baseball has done a good job of rooting that out, so much so that people like Luis Ortiz and Emmanuel Clase from the Guardians removed in the middle of the season for perhaps they were tipping pitches. Like you said, they can't, they can get some individual things there, but generally speaking, you don't influence.
No, baseball's been the strictest. I will defend Shoeless Joe Jackson forever, but if there's even a glimmer in the last 100 plus years, you're done.
But in
Whereas
basketball,
that's not been the case in the NBA. They're getting a little stricter now, but they tried to make you forget about the early 2000s. Then you get the Porter scandal. Now that we're more involved with gambling, it's even a bigger deal. But there have been fixes and scandals and people admitting that they fixed NBA games over the years. People joking about it. If you watch again in college basketball, it's not the NBA, but that Boston College scandal, all of those people involved have talked very candidly in multiple documentaries, and multiple of them admitted fixing games and all of that back years ago. And that's not all, of course, Adam Silver is the NBA's fault, but they are the top league of that sport.
Tim
and that
Donaghy.
Sport has been very controversial. Tim Donaghy is the face of that referee scandal in the early 2000s.
It shows, to use a very HR or corporate term, lack of institutional control. And if the owners actually believe and see that this continues to unravel and it involves more names and more players, then you might see the tide turn on Silver. And I mean, fan scrutiny is one thing, but we saw a league like the NFL, which of course is more powerful than the NBA, admittedly.
Roger Goodell is very unpopular with the fans. And it doesn't matter. The owners don't give a damn.
Better now, but for those people that watched him go through how awful the Ray Rice situation was, where Rice was on video beating his then girlfriend in an elevator at a casino at the time, and how the suspension and kind of reneging on it and then going back and X, Y, and Z and all of that. And for Goodell to be able to survive that with 32 owners, to see Silver survive this would be interesting, especially because we're not talking about a player personnel issue. We're talking directly about, is the integrity of the game compromised?
Yeah, I don't think there's any issue of Silver surviving the Clippers scandal, even no matter what he knew, even if he knew more than he's letting out. You could still kind of put that on. That's a franchise and owner. They knew the rules. I told them the rules. They're enforced, and they went rogue. And maybe he goes and puts another iron fist down on them. Although we've talked on the last show, we don't think he really would be as harsh on them as maybe he should be, because you are dealing with owners. There is a fraternity there, and there's probably other owners finagling a cap as well, and there's maybe other no-show jobs. That could be a slippery slope. But I do think Adam Silver would kind of skate on that. And what we're not bringing up yet that is also going to be in the owners' minds, George, if they are evaluating wanting to continue on with Adam Silver, these franchises are worth billions of dollars, whether they win or lose. Look at what the Lakers sold for. Look at what the Celtics have sold for. Look at these other franchises that aren't even legit contenders and in major media markets and what they are valued for. The NBA is not the NFL, but it's right below and above the other major leagues for sure, above Major League Baseball, above the NHL, above Major League Soccer, and way above those. And the NFL is way above the NBA, but the NBA is way above the others. So they're making money. The owners are making money, and they almost have found the perfect storm that Major League Baseball cannot figure out. There is a cap. They do have parity. They allow an Oklahoma City Thunder team in a small market to now embark potentially on a dynasty and win a championship. Yet everybody still makes tons of money, and it doesn't affect anybody's pocketbook all that much. Yeah. Whereas Major League Baseball is arguing no cap because it'll affect the ceiling of what players and people could make, and that's not capitalism. Well, the NBA is not worried about it, and they have it in, and they have a strict apron rule and everything. It's even stricter than ever before, and it's great for the league. So in that respect, the NBA is fine, and that has to also be part of the Adam Silver story, but this certainly taints his legacy a bit. And the number one thing he needs to answer in all of this, George, is why, and he's talked about it a little bit, but he's not given an adequate answer for me. Why did Terry Rozier get cleared and then play? I understand and he admitted this, that the NBA does not have the ability to investigate to the level of Kash Patel and the FBI, etc. Of course, everyone could guess that, but they did do an investigation in some way. They then cleared
internal
him.
League investigation, yep.
And he played. So now all the games he played in are heavily compromised, and it's not like he's a superstar here. That's an issue they need to answer for. The other end of this, George, and this kind of connects again to Major League Baseball, who's dealt with gambling scandals and players being accused of tanking and fixing games for eons. And everyone has the opinion on Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. And I do think they both should be in the Hall of Fame and to celebrate their individual success, even if you maybe understand you don't bet on the sport that you say you're the manager in, like on Pete Rose. But you have a Hall of Famer involved in this who Pete Rose was a manager, and that was said that to be worse than when he was a player. He was basically banned as a manager for his infractions. Certainly believe he was doing as a player too, but as a manager, betting on his team that he was managing, lied about it forever. And then, of course, we now know the truth. He says he always bet on him to win, but who really knows? But him being a manager was the crux of that. So you have Chauncey Billups as a Hall of Famer, not to the Pete Rose level, but a Hall of Famer, Finals MVP, Big Shot Bob on the Pistons team that won a title in 2004. And then being accused of this as a head coach, similar again kind of to Pete Rose. The other part of this scandal that no one really wants to talk about because he's also such a popular figure and a well-respected player, coach, and person associated with the league, that not only does the NBA need to answer to why Terry Rozier was cleared, and the FBI clearly thinks he did wrong and shouldn't have been playing, but do you need, if you get proof of guilt, you can easily ban Damon Jones and no one cares. You can ban Terry Rozier and no one cares. He's now a bench player that never really gets in games, currently speaking. Porter was a little above that, but no big deal, no skin off their back. It's not like you're involved with LeBron James being accused of this, like some people believe Michael Jordan had his 2-year absence from the NBA in the mid '90s because of maybe involvement with gambling. But as I will tease us, by the way, before we take a quick break, so I can feed my daughter and also we can pay some bills here on the Howitzer and Buzzsaw show, I will leave you, George, to speculate and then go to break. Do you need to, if you get proof of guilt, do you need to ban a Hall of Famer from your league? And then, George, here's the planting of seeds. We know what happened with Pete Rose. I'm not saying it's apples to apples necessarily, but if you ban everybody involved in this, like the NBA has been operating, and that includes Chauncey Billups, and you ban him for life, which maybe could be the end result here if he is proven guilty, do you need to remove him from the Hall of Fame?
Yeah. Yeah. This has to be, I know that we know how baseball goes with and how seriously it takes it in this context, that now only after Pete Rose's death that this has been the case, but that baseball finally wants to allow him this opportunity to be considered by what will be the Veterans Committee when the next Hall of Fame vote comes up. But Basketball Hall of Fame, notorious for, my words, letting in pretty much anybody under the sun that they want to let in. And not that Chauncey Billups wasn't deserving of that, but I just say that to illustrate the point that baseball, of course, is the most strict and stringent of the Hall of Fames, character clause and things that have come up over the years that for reasons that which have led to reasons for people being kept out of that, whether they've been in the steroid era, whether they're people like Kurt Schilling, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, yeah, if you're and also to make the connection in all these cases that, the Basketball Hall of Fame is a writ large body organization based in Massachusetts that covers all of basketball. So there's college people in the Basketball Hall of Fame. It's not the Professional Basketball Hall of Fame, just like the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton is not the NFL Hall of Fame. It's the Professional Football Hall of Fame. Same thing with baseball, National Baseball Hall of Fame, though it's got the closest connection and tie to its sport. But the Basketball Hall of Fame encompasses everybody and everybody involved in the game of basketball, whether that's at the collegiate level, even the junior levels, those type of things, and of course the professional level. But yes, if you've committed such a sin as this, even though Chauncey Billups specifically in this ring, but his involvement very specifically is tied to foremost the issue with the gambling and the legal poker ring and everything like that. And then the betting stuff is more closely tied to Rozier, but also perhaps Billups tied into that as well. You've got a situation that is untenable if an actual verdict by a jury delivered, presumably a grand jury, delivered against Chauncey Billups and these other people, then yeah, Billups and whoever, if there's even other people that we've not even heard about or talked about yet, that may be Hall of Fame related or connected to the Hall of Fame or be Hall of Famers, that the book and the hammer should come down on them as well. Because again, I keep going back to the baseball example, but it is baseball that always carries this flag of integrity, and the integrity of our game is paramount. And in every clubhouse in Major League Baseball, 30 clubhouses, there's explicitly posted the rules about gambling. And the league has now taken that, I don't want to say more seriously, but it has been very vigilant in its crackdowns in the age of sports betting. I mentioned Manuel Clase and Luis Ortiz, and if you search online, you'll see some pitches and some instances where perhaps those gentlemen we're not trying to affect the outcome of Guardians games, but they made suspect type of pitches that were either in the dirt or out of the zone, wildly out of context, slightly wildly out of context, I'll say, because Clase is a guy who throws routinely in the hundreds, and sometimes those he can get wild, but these pitches were like a little bit on the, you start, questioning things. And so when you've got a situation like that, baseball has stepped in immediately and said, no, and cracked down on that. So that's where I land on that. If you're basketball, the integrity of your game is the most paramount thing, or at least should be the most paramount thing. And as Mike has mentioned here a couple of times, basketball has had instances in the past. Tim Donaghy, and that issue is one that comes, frequently to mind, the most recent, where that integrity has come into question. And now here you are again, where that integrity has come into question. So especially when the commissioner and his league's internal investigation revealed no wrongdoing, and then the federal government said, well, we've got evidence to the contrary to hand down these very, very serious indictments. So something that's still going to unravel, that we of course will keep tabs on. I feel like we've talked about gambling multiple times in the last few months here, and when we come back, we will kind of tie it in with how that interacts with just some of the other sports betting culture in our country. And also we will pivot to college football after the break as well, and talk about some of these job openings that just continue to pop. It's going to be a wild year on the carousel, man. I'm telling you. P4, half, what feels like half the SEC has their jobs open. You're in a win now movement where money is driving players in NIL and funding these athletic departments post House settlement that just came down this summer. So what does that mean for these programs, these very iconic, many very iconic programs who are in search of a new head coach here already? Barely little more than halfway, but some barely halfway into the season, have chosen to fire their coaches. We will try to wrap our heads around all of that. That comes up next here on the HBS. All right.
All right, I'm back. I believe it was 27 when I left, but then you talked for a little bit. But,
Oh yeah, no, I got the mark when I took the break. 1 hour, perfect. All right.
all right.
Welcome back inside the Howitzer and Buzzsaw show. I am George the Howitzer Gerbo.
And I am Mike the Buzzsaw Asti. And before we continue the gambling talk, see if you agree with these. So to start out my top 5 candy lineup for Halloween,
Okay.
Reese's, the GOAT. Snickers has to be there. Twix has to be there. M&M's, big fan of the peanut M&M's, has to be there. And then chips. If you get a bag of chips,
I like
that's
potato
a solid
chips.
grab as well. So not a candy, but a solid grab as well. But that's my top 5, maybe interchangeable, but I think Reese's is the GOAT and has to be in the top spot in terms of the candy lineup or treats that you could obtain when trick-or-treating.
I will swap Snickers.
Reese's is a pretty
No.
strong
You and
GOAT.
I both love. Yeah, I love Reese's.
I have to have Reese's in the top spot.
I'll take out chips, and I forget what your fourth one was.
Well, I had M&M's, Twix,
Yeah,
Snickers, Reese's.
I can do without M&M's. So I'll go Kit Kat, and this is widely
Kit Kat's not bad. Kit Kat would have been 6 for me if I didn't put chips in. I probably would.
I'll go on pop. This is more of an acquired taste for some people. I like Mounds. I like the coconut.
No, see, Mound. I'm not against coconut, but Mounds should not be.
I know many people do not like it. So
I'm not. I will eat it if it's in the bag.
Yeah,
but liking it and putting it in the top 5.
That's why it's 5th, because I like the other ones better, but then I kind of like having the coconut
conversation.
In there sometimes, so.
Now, if I'm going to provide you one of the worst options, that would be a milk dud. I do not want a milk dud. I do not want a milk dud anywhere. Last year, actually, Mila obtained way too many milk duds.
Oh wow!
But
okay.
Three Musketeers, Milky Ways, they're in there as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you get a king size, that trumps another that's maybe smaller. Reese's for sure is the GOAT. I just didn't want to exclude chips because you know that when you're trick-or-treating, a lot of houses sometimes give you the bag of chips. And if you're choosing between candy, maybe that's not a Reese's or a Snickers, and a bag of chips, I maybe would lean the bag of chips, depending on what the bag of chips is, but I would maybe lean the bag of chips over certain candy, especially after I already got enough of the other candy. So I like to sprinkle in a bag of chips for sure. But yeah, Reese's, Snickers, Twix, peanut M&Ms, and a bag of chips. And I could see a Kit Kat thrown in there if you want to argue that chips shouldn't be part of this. I could definitely then throw a Kit Kat in there for sure. But yes, HBS back with you. Lucy has been fed, and I will like to once again reiterate that if you end up finding out that Chauncey Billups especially has guilt here, and you prove guilt, I'm a big fan of innocent to proven guilty, so you got to prove this guilt, but you prove the guilt, I don't know how you avoid banning him for life, which means no more coaching, no more involvement, no more work in media, nothing in partnership with the NBA. And then if you do that, like Pete Rose, because part of the ban is you're not eligible for the Hall of Fame, even though the Baseball Hall of Fame, it's not really the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Obviously, what you do outside of Major League Baseball, if it's a baseball career, can get you in. Same thing with the Basketball Hall of Fame. You can get in just for international play or for college or collective, everything together with the NBA. But if you are banned from Major League Baseball, you are not eligible for the Hall of Fame. And now, Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, we talked about it here on the HBS. I've covered it. I wrote about it. Now, when you pass away, that gets lifted and you become eligible for the Hall of Fame. But while Chauncey Billups is living, if he's found guilty and gets banned, And there's not as much precedent for taking somebody out of the Hall of Fame in comparison of excluding somebody and not making somebody eligible to be voted in. But I think it would be pretty murky waters to have him banned from the league, proven guilty here as a head coach, to be tipping off gamblers on who's going to be sitting out games, helping prop bets, helping potentially fix games, and have him in that Hall of Fame. I don't even know. Do you think they even have jurisdiction to get him out of there? Because he's already in. But I don't see how you would be able to have him in your Hall of Fame while he's banned for this infraction, as serious as this would be for the integrity of your sport.
Yeah, and we'll see if anybody else is tied up.
That's the thing too.
And wines.
As we talked about with the Kawhi Leonard scandal, I'm sure there's other players that maybe have a no-show job. I imagine here there's going to be other players that will come out to be involved. The way the Trump regime has been working so far, and certainly the way Kash Patel has been working so far, they are not going to leave anybody out if they are involved and if there's guilt here. And George, I think something needs to be said as well, because some tried to connect the dots to a political nature here. Stephen A. Smith even tried to make this political. Of course, he's going into politics as a, the other end of his career involved with sports. But the investigations for this from the FBI started before Trump retook office. That needs made clear. Now, you could argue that Trump and Kash Patel and the FBI now is taking this more seriously, and maybe this is part of whatever vendetta you want to argue, and maybe he even has issues with the sports world for not being able to be an owner of the Buffalo Bills and myriad of NFL franchises over the years. But separate from all of that, this did start under the Biden administration. This did start in 2023. This was before Trump was back in office. So that's something that needs said here. This can't just be thrown if, say, you're a liberal and you want to throw this on Trump and you're a Chauncey Billups guy for some reason. This was before. So it does, again, make you wonder why this took so long to get here, why the NBA cleared Terry Rozier, why he was able to play, why this now is a thing when maybe it was not as much a thing in public media prior. I don't know how many fans even knew this investigation was going on. You knew about Porter, but only after the news hit that he was going to be banned and what he was guilty for. So why, I guess the FBI wanted this to be under wraps while they investigate, but why was this kept so much under wraps? Everything in our sports world today gets leaked and is reported on. Why did Brian Windhorst and company not report on this earlier? It does lead you to believe maybe the NBA didn't want this to come out. It's part of in being in bed with ESPN and different networks, especially. It kind of makes this feel a little murky. But I mean, before we get to the rest of this, any other thoughts on how this unravels? If you think we get another big name, if you think Billups is the tip of the iceberg here, if you think we get another Kash Patel press conference, because it was weird to have him talk about Chauncey Billups at one already. Do we get more commentary from Kash Patel on Chauncey Billups? As insane as I don't think anyone had that on their bingo card when Trump took
the
FBI director talking.
When they announced the investigation,
where do we go?
It's not uncommon for to have that level of involvement from the director of the FBI.
It is rare to have a press conference. I cannot think of an FBI director having a press conference.
It's rare, but the FBI and DOJ announces these types of actions like this, so that's nothing new. Director being where, whatever, but the entire Trump administration makes it about themselves, so that's
the press conference is a bit more of a show than we're used to with this, but the investigation started before Trump was in office. Correct. So this is not just a Trump thing, which is
no, as you said,
but I don't know.
I think there will be other people named in this. Will they be bigger than Billups? I don't know. And again, it could delve in. Remember, there's connections with the mob, the mafia, crime families, and whatnot. Could delve into their goings-ons. So I do think other names will come out, and we are nowhere near the end of this. In the next month, we will have more as the indictments and arraignments and whatnot play out here.
Okay. So. Well, then a simple question then as we segue. off of what we know now and what maybe we could speculate, and where there's smoke, there's usually fire in something like this. And I think we can agree that the FBI is, even if you want to have it a show and have a rare press conference that's not normal, if the FBI is going to have a press conference and going to make arrests after years of investigation in multiple administrations, they got something or they wouldn't be doing this. With that said, do you believe Chauncey Billups ever coaches in the NBA ever again? And if we're talking a year from now, is he still in the Hall of Fame?
No, there would have to be some sort of complete and total exoneration and backtracking of, yeah, we're sorry, he was innocent and cleared of everything. And even then,
He's
it would
going
be
to be
hard.
treated as guilty until proven innocent, almost the reverse of
Sure, but
society. Well, I'm just
I mean,
asking.
we don't know that
Yeah.
yet. But
Right.
the information is there. What the prosecution
Doesn't look
claims,
good.
what the federal government claims, and so now it's up to him and his defense team to. Terry Rozier maintains his innocence. His lawyer said as much.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it doesn't matter as much. We can get rid of him from the league
yeah,
real quickly. Same thing with
yeah.
Damon Jones, who's already out of the league.
So
But yeah, you don't think Billups coaches again? I don't think so either. No.
no, nobody's gonna
If
take
I
that
had
on.
to bet, though, I think Billups does not coach again. And as unfair as this may sound, I think Billups does not coach again, but somehow stays in the Hall of Fame. I think that nobody is really bringing this up. He is well respected. He's already in, so it's not like you have to avoid voting on him. I think it's harder to get somebody out who's already in. O.J. Simpson, of course, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If he had to be voted on today, I'm sure, wouldn't get in for what happened off the field and not so much on the field. I believe that because of the popularity of this player in Chauncey Billups and the respect that he does garner, and how much the league is in bed with gambling, he's already had some defenders because of that. That even if he is banned from the league, even if he never coaches again, which I do think are both going to be the result here, I think there's just going to be a quiet, let's just not talk about it, and they're just not going to have to remove him from the Hall of Fame. If I had to bet money, ironic for this segment here, if I had to bet for this gambling drama, I would bet he's never coaching again. He's never in media. They're going to kind of keep him quiet and tell Carmelo Anthony is the word name I'm trying to look for there. I think they're going to tell Carmelo Anthony and other NBA players, hey, we would prefer you not to have him on your podcast anymore because he's already been on multiple of those shows. With all of that said, though, I don't think he's going to be out of the Hall of Fame. I think he should be removed if you're going to be fair with what's happened throughout sports, certainly connecting to Major League Baseball. But I think they're somehow going to skate on that and he's going to stay in. If I had to bet.
The next level that develops from that, as I teased before the break, is we mentioned on the last HBS about the NCAA enacting a change on rules, removing their ban of allowing student athletes to gamble on professional sports events. They still, of course, cannot gamble on their own events or NCAA events, but that would allow athletes as well as the people that work within athletic departments to bet on professional sports.
That's a lot of people, too, by the way.
A lot of people.
Make it clear. That's a lot of people. That's not. That's well beyond just the athletes.
Correct. And the athletes are a lot.
Right.
That affected. It was approved earlier this month. It was going to become effective the beginning of next month, November 1st. Now we're going to allude and say in light of this a little bit. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey is one of the, of course, two major conferences along with the Big Ten and its Commissioner Tony Petitti, but SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, following a meeting that his conference had earlier this month, was, quote, clear and united in opposing the NCAA's decision, arguing that any reform to gambling policy should involve, quote, careful refinement rather than the removal of, quote, guardrails that have separated athletics from wagering. And perhaps in a bit of listening or hearing, the NCAA has now moved to delay that implementation that I just mentioned by approximately 3 weeks, moving it to November 22nd. Wiggle room, perhaps seeing there's some error of its ways here, Mike, and specifically when you have your largest and most influential conference coming down on the side of being against this.
Yeah, I'm sure if the ACC commissioner said this, they wouldn't care as much. That's just the case. It's not even so much of being one of the top two, and you could argue that despite recent titles, the SEC still has the most in terms of depth and most elite programs. They still matter the most. But look at what ESPN cares about. They care about the SEC even more than the Big Ten. Look at where they are every week for game day. It's usually SEC schools, the best SEC game, even if it's not the best game of the week. It's not a coincidence in any way, whether they admit it or not, that the SEC commissioner would be the one to speak out. The others have said nothing, which often maybe means they're in lockstep, or else they probably would also speak out. They're not shy. Brett Yormark's not shy at all. The Big 12 commissioner, he's been involved with gambling before. He wants to use it. He wants to move events to Vegas. Georgia, I would imagine, without speaking to him, that Brett Yormark is probably not against this, because he's probably the most gambling connected of the four Power Four commissioners throughout his career, and what he wants to do with the Big 12. He kind of wants to use it to his advantage. But there's no coincidence here that the SEC speaks and college football, the NCAA bows down. The major networks bow down and they listen, and that's really where the true money is, and where college football still dominates, no matter what you may think. I will say, though, as much as all of that's true, I would imagine, as I said before, the genie's out of the bottle. We are so knee-deep in gambling, and maybe you can do something with prop betting. I did allude earlier that maybe the NBA should try to remove prop betting. Certainly, their players shouldn't be betting on their league. Major League Baseball players shouldn't be betting on Major League Baseball. NFL players shouldn't bet on NFL games. That should go without saying and should always be there. That's how we have these scandals. But as far as betting on other leagues, betting in general, there's so much hypocrisy that would exist. I don't see how you eventually avoid this, that even though it's been tabled for a few weeks and the SEC commissioner is against it, so you bow down, I don't think it's something that the SEC is going to be able to win this forever or in perpetuity delay this. I feel like eventually this is going to happen, especially when you get to the finish line and you're basically at the 1 yard line and the SEC is putting up a solid goal line defense, but eventually is probably going to be forced to break. And maybe there's another penalty that gives them another set of downs, and the NCAA can power through for the touchdown here, because we are just so far into this and so knee deep into this gambling world. Even for college athletics, they're never going to legalize a college player being able to bet on college sports. But to say a college player can't bet on an NFL game or an NBA game or Major League Baseball game or an NHL game if they want to, that feels like it's hard. It's going to be hard to regulate and avoid that when those bets will not affect the integrity of their league. I do get that it's a slippery slope, that you then are going to eventually get down a road that probably you're going to have a college athlete that's going to bet on college sports, and that will be a major scandal. But I just don't know how you avoid this.
Yeah, it's headed down that road, and it's just, so why, if you're the NCAA, my only
talk about admitting you have no power. They should have just avoided what the SEC commissioner had to say and at least try to get a little power and invoke a little power here, but they basically bowed down.
My only, and this is a completely tangential guess, in interest of full disclosure, I'm obviously not a lawyer here. I think that they feel that they, much in the way of like how all this NIL stuff and whatnot is played out, I feel like the NCAA thinks that it could be the victim of another lawsuit by somebody who is just like, hey, I'm 18 years old, I'm a legal citizen of the United States, and not that gambling is a right, but it's not barred by anything. Why can't I have access to this if it's not on my own team, my own league, or whatnot? In the same way, the way we just talked about the professional athletes do, they're not barred from it by the NBA.
Yeah. If Terry Rozier was
not barred from having the apps and gambling
Series
on other sports besides theirs. So
I don't think NFL would care.
I don't want to call it a free speech issue, but I have a lack of better term there. But I think the NCAA is, in theory, you could have a college athlete saying, hey, I can buy cigarettes, I can X, Y, and Z. I'm an 18-year-old, can't drink, of course, 21, but I should be allowed to have access to, You can curtail it on the sports and the league I participate in, NCAA, but you can't curtail it as it relates to other sports. That's my very uneducated thought on the issue, if there is one.
You could even argue that I'm surprised it took so long for a college athlete to argue that. The way we got to NIL and the portal and all of that is off of college athletes forming unions or trying to form a union and arguing things in court and saying that you're infringing on my rights, etc. And they were correct on many of those arguments, and that's how we got to here. And of course, now the NCAA is trying to figure things out with rev share and going to one portal window instead of two, and they're trying to rein things in, even though it's run amok. But to say no altogether is something the NCAA just doesn't have power and can't do anymore. You can't tell a kid that the coach has rights to seek other employment or seek other jobs, but you're stuck. Even though there's no contracts, you're stuck. You can regulate how many times maybe you can transfer, or when the window happens, you can do like the NFL has free agency during a period. You can do that. But you can't restrict altogether and force a kid to be at a school after his coach leaves anymore. That just wouldn't feel right. You can't avoid an athlete trying to make some money off their jersey being sold in the number that's clearly them when everyone else is making money. You can't avoid that anymore. They're getting money for their name, image, and likeness, meaning their value. If someone has value, they should make money off of it. That's how we got here in NIL. And then gambling is the same regard. So I don't know how they'd be able to avoid this. I guess the other question is, George, as much as everyone knows the NCAA has no real power, these commissioners, especially in college football, have all the power, and the SEC has the most power, and then Big Ten, and then it's really Big 12 and ACC, whatever you want to argue, and then the Group of Fives really have no power at all. But are you at all surprised, because you know that this is eventually going to happen, and the NCAA clearly is willing to allow this to happen by getting it to the 1 yard line, that one commissioner, even as powerful as the SEC commissioner, would delay this to a level that now, if this eventually goes down, this is going to put egg potentially on both the NCAA and the SEC's face, because it's going to be like you only delayed it periodically, but then you still lose the battle. That's going to make the SEC mad, obviously. The NCAA is kind of looking bad now that they want to do something, but now it gets delayed off of one voice. How are they going to force this on later on? Like, what's going to change in these 3 weeks to table this and then have the same result? Are you at all surprised that it's just been tabled? I mean, I could understand responding to the SEC commissioner, but once you get so far and it's public knowledge and it's been nationally reported, you clearly want to do this. I feel like you almost have to power through, or you look ridiculous and like you have no power, which is the reality, but perception is now gone by even tabling this at all.
Yeah, it feels like a check, the SEC throwing a check to the NCAA, just kind of being like, hey, this was kind of approved without the buy-in or consent of maybe its member schools.
It has to have been.
Right.
Has to have been. Or else they would have tried to do this behind closed doors. The SEC probably would rather have this done behind closed doors than be arguing to the media.
Yeah, they can't. It leaves for the NCAA to move on it, and also to do it during the season. A lot of these bylaw and that type of stuff happens. Of course, the colleges run on this and the leagues run on this academic kind of calendar, which starts July 1. So there might have been a place to do this over the summer and tuck it in there without as many people noticing.
Portal window was mid-season. The announcement of the change of the portal window was mid-season.
Same. But that was kind of born out of necessity because there was a need to fix that.
Sure, right? and we're going to get into it in the back half of the show. But the other end of it is, and you could argue this is kind of unfair for certain schools compared to others. In the middle of the season, they changed the rule that now if a coach leaves or gets fired or whatever happens, the portal does not open automatically. The portal only opens for the current window. It only opens for the current window when you hire the next guy. So not in the interim when you're
after they saw 3 to 4 people get fired, then they got very reactionary. But that's not fair.
Right. Right around the time James Franklin got fired, and of course now that rule is going to apply for LSU and these other schools that have since fired coaches. That
UCLA and Virginia
it used to be before, and I covered it when Huggins was ousted at West Virginia. Virginia, that the second there is an open vacancy of a head coach, and you could argue it actually was fair to the kids, because why should they have to stay and be screwed when somebody else does wrong? It's not their fault. But once a head coaching position is vacant, whether it be fired, ousted, leaves, retires, whatever, there's then a portal window for those kids to choose to leave. It's now been changed to where the portal opens when the new coach is hired, and obviously he may want different players, he may not even want them, but they then have the opportunity once the new coach is hired, but not during the search. They allow schools to at least have it be calmer and just do the search during this period. So, George, the counter is that I could get the necessity when it got crazy. But if you fired a coach before James Franklin, which is kind of the benchmark of this rule, and you were under the old rule, there were players that left prior to that rule change. Those schools could argue, hey, what the hell? We fired a coach first, and that we were under the old rule that makes it harder on us. You could make an argument, George, in the interest of fairness, if you were in charge of things. Maybe you could announce this is going to be the new rule, but it happens from now on at the end of the season, or everyone else is grandfathered in to the old rule.
Yes.
It's different rules for different programs right now, which is a bit weird. And, and that's not fair, obviously.
And my original point being, if you're the NCAA and you wanted to slip this in under, the cover of darkness, so to speak, without pushback, then you should have done it over the summer.
Right.
Not during the middle of the academic year when people are paying attention.
All of these should have happened over the summer, but the other, I'm not surprised, I guess, that all of this is happening in the middle of the season, because you had one happen in the middle of the season. Why not just F it up with them all? But yeah, it should have happened prior to the season for sure. This has all been talked about, but it's not like it's just all now a thing. This has all been talked about behind closed doors for a while. So it would be like if they announced rev share in the middle of the season. That was at least done in the off season. So yeah, it should have been, but it wasn't. But I imagine that we get what the NCAA wants in general. Do you think, because the SEC obviously has the most power and has the loudest voice, so that's common, they would have power to delay this. Do you think we eventually get the opinions of the other commissioners? And if you had to speculate, because neither one of us would know for sure right now, do you think this is just the SEC? Because often they are doing their own thing. Do you think this is just the SEC having this opinion and everyone else has a counter opinion? Like I do speculate Brett Yormark is probably in favor of gambling. Or do you think they all are kind of in lockstep and then the SEC just has the power to force this on?
No,
I ask all of that because I would imagine that this is something that while the conferences do different things over the years with schedules and strength of schedule and fairness and all of that, this is something you got to be uniform on because it involves the overall sport. So I imagine they should be uniform on, but I don't know if they are or not.
Yeah, I think it's the SEC and potentially the Big Ten that would be involved, and that the other conferences, perhaps in a bid for themselves to make money off of gambling, would be.
I would imagine Big 12
would hold their tongues. So that's where I stand on that.
I would imagine the Big 12 at least would be in favor of gambling just to try to make money off of it for sure, just to use it as a money ship, and probably knowing that this is going to happen anyway. So I would imagine that they wouldn't all be in lockstep, but I also would maybe imagine that we maybe don't hear anything else about this, and they just kind of try to do it under the radar.
It may go into effect, but maybe the SEC has made its position known. So we'll see if they choose to take any further implementation or actions on that. So, speaking of these aforementioned coaches that Mike has mentioned, we are gearing up toward.
More could come.
Crazy, and it's funny, so we're just gearing up to an absolutely ridiculous December and January when this carousel will literally spin off of its base in the world of college football. Billy Napier won a game at Mississippi State. Now they've been done with him for a long time. He's gone out at Florida. Brian Kelly, who I've learned this week and had this inkling, but I've learned this week from the internet, seemingly roundly the most hated man in college football.
Former players just throwing dirt.
Former players and coaches, and it tracks. Guy always has kind of portrayed himself as an a-hole, and that comes off here as he, in his final days at LSU, where he goes as been reported, goes to meet with the athletic director in Baton Rouge and wanted the offensive coordinator fired, and Kelly wasn't willing to do it and got into this weird contentious thing. And next thing you know, he's fired at 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday while I'm at a football game. So just a very strange occurrence and way. It seemed like Kelly could have kept his job there, at least for the rest of the season, but chose not to agree to that demand. And now he is out as LSU's head coach. His tenure
also seemed like there was a discrepancy over his buyout. I mean, obviously we know what the number is and how high it is, and that's been the issue. That's not really been an issue, I guess. People just willing to pay buyouts. But the entire day of Sunday, it was clear he was going to be fired, but then even national media was saying, well, I'm not going to definitively say the word fire despite he's going to be gone because we haven't had this buyout worked out. So you wonder what he was trying to counter, because clearly it appears that maybe, I'm going to speculate here, that they knew the buyout number. Clearly they were probably trying to fire him and get him to agree to a lower number, and he was probably not willing to do so. And it got to the point that they just let him go anyway. But we don't normally get that much information on national reports that they're even talking for hours on end about a buyout. There was a lot more reporting with the Brian Kelly news than we even get with most coaches, but most of these have also been surprising, you could argue.
Yes. And so add him to a long FBS list, but specifically we'll as we've been talking here, we'll talk about the schools in the Power Four. Mentioned Virginia Tech and Brent Pry, Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy, Stanford's job filled in the interim by former Terp Frank Reich, Oliver, who was Oliver Luck's coach in Indianapolis with the Colts. That's why he's there. Arkansas's vacancy right now in the interim by Bobby Petrino, UCLA, Florida, Penn State, obviously James Franklin, and now add Florida and LSU to that list.
And there's maybe North Carolina, because that's still always been talked about.
North Carolina.
There's other schools for sure.
Wisconsin is the other immediate one that comes to mind.
Right.
A lot, because Wisconsin just has not been able to score points, but Wisconsin, North Carolina, and then just others like classic get to the end of the season and fire your coach, like the old days, not after 4 games. So those will all come. And the biggest, I think, not only you mentioned the portal thing, and it appears, this, like, for example, when Brent Pry was fired from Virginia Tech now last month.
Yeah, that was before Franklin. That was under the old rules.
And that was under the old rules. So Virginia Tech players, upon his firing, immediately had 30 days if they wanted to go anywhere. Now, what is it? What is the benefit that, to my knowledge, not many of them, if none of them did. But yeah, when you're a month into the season, are you going to transfer and not play football? Because you're not just going to go to a program. So now the rule change has been made a little bit better. The players are kind of frozen for a period, and then a coach is hired, and then there's a freezing period there, and then the players transfer, and the window's much smaller now.
What this has mostly affected the last month with so many coaches being fired is the 2026 high school recruiting class.
Yes. And
a
lot of these players have all now, of course.
Have done and I even told some of these recruits in conversations that it's a little ridiculous, the wording here, because you have many of them saying they are still committed. They are not decommitting, but yet they're reopening your recruitment.
Opening their recruitment.
FYI, you're decommitting if you're opening up your recruitment.
Yeah.
But there is that language that exists now. That's a new thing for this carousel because they don't want to be without a program. But Virginia Tech has been really the most plucked off in that respect, from which everyone recruiting their players. But that has really been an impact here. That has affected the high school recruiting, and then you can argue the importance there in comparison to the portal. But it's just insane. It's made it very, very interesting this year, and it also shows a different tone that no matter how big the buyout, it used to be, George, that certain buyouts are just so big that schools get screwed. But we've learned over the years, even before this, even the
Jimbo was the first.
Well, Jimbo was the first for a big number, but what I was even going to connect to even the program that I cover in West Virginia with a much lower buyout number, every single time, it works like clockwork. In the last 2 or 3 years in this NIL era now, every single time somebody would bang the drum that, you can't fire that guy because the buyout's too big. We've heard it with Napier. We heard it with James Franklin. We heard it with Brian Kelly. George, I heard it with Neil Brown. And what happened when it got so loud last year that, West Virginia just cannot afford to fire him? A prominent media member, very loud, West Virginia cannot afford to fire him. What happened? 2 weeks later, he was fired. The point of it is these programs in this era, because there's such a sense of urgency, they just figure out a way. They just figure out whether it's 76 million, 15 million, whether it's relative to you, no matter how much money you have, they're going to figure out a way. So whenever somebody bangs the drum, this school cannot fire that guy because of a buyout number. I almost expect the firing to go down. They just find a way. They find a way. It's just how it's been, and there's no number that's too large. We've seen that. Yeah, Jimbo was the tip of the iceberg, was 70+ million a few years ago, and with all the money that's at Texas A&M, and everyone knows all the money there, they haven't really been able to win.
They're still paying Jimbo
in a while.
And Mike Elko now has them as a top 5 player in the nation. That's the trade-off. They're
Right,
top 5 team in the nation.
Right. Yeah. It's taken a while to get back here, but it looks like that's a job that he doesn't even want to leave, because obviously there's tons of resources there, but Jimbo was not able to win with the resources there. There's no guarantee to win even when you have resources in this era, and they're willing to pay him because all the money they still have, and then to win with somebody else and continue on. And James Franklin's number of $49 million, then you get to $56 million, and there's just no number that's too big. There's no number that's too big. So what I'm saying is I do not want anyone else, all of our colleagues in all of college media, I don't want to hear again, this school can't fire that guy because of this number. That doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
That no longer exists. There's no number too big, and almost every single time that's said, a coach gets fired. It's like the foreshadowing of a firing here.
And they've structured these, give or take the school, without looking it up. Jimbo was due in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 million immediately, or within a certain very soon period of time after his dismissal.
Right.
And then the rest of that money is now being paid out over the course of time. Whereas some other colleges are like, yeah, here's the buyout, but we defer a lot of it, and it's not as much of a hit in the first place. But when you've opened it up now for,
even Penn State, they have the amendment that you have to seek future employment.
Yes.
And if you get future employment, it comes way down.
Yes.
Jimbo's been sitting on his couch. He has no requirement to seek employment. He's had
like he was
a few
on the
conversations.
The SEC now, he's doing a little bit of television here.
But he has not had any sense of urgency to go ahead and seek employment. If the job is not good, he's not going to take the job. He's been in some rumors. He was talked about briefly with the West Virginia job. But if he doesn't want the job, he's not taking the job. Whereas James Franklin basically can't do that. There has to be some urgency or some effort on him. He's not doesn't be forced to take a job he doesn't want, but he has to give an earnest effort for some employment at some point. Not the case with Jimbo. So they are making these deals a little bit easier to deal with, even though the money is so high and they're eventually going to get theirs.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting here that nothing is off limits in this era because of the pressure, because of how much money's flying around.
And yeah, the two things I'll add to that are the real interesting place where this shakes out is, this trickle down effect when we start looking at when the dominoes fall and how this looks. When Nick Saban retired, and in the way he did it, where it was very quick. And
he knew what the hell was coming.
and sudden,
Yeah, right.
No, so Kalen DeBoer, who was at a Washington program that had just been in the college football playoff,
sure,
suddenly ends up down there, and he brings people with him, and then Saban assistants go elsewhere, and just the way that trickles down goes through every level of football, even down sometimes at the high school level, because you'll bring guys up from high school or junior college or
they lost recruits, and Alabama never loses recruits, but they did that year.
So when we Zach Alley at West Virginia, could he be a coveted? Would somebody be willing to give him the chance to be a head coach? All these things.
Maybe if the defense didn't have a big decline for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think he might have been weeks ago, but
he might have been. So it leads to schools that have been stable, haven't had any issues. They'll suddenly have vacancies and positions, assistants they'll have to fill based on these schools, so many of them prominent, firing their coaches.
Yeah, and the other part of that is we've seen this over the years, but it's been a while because these schools love to do searches.
Mhm.
But as a little bit of a safeguard, you mentioned Zach Alley. He could be one that maybe schools would do this with, or even West Virginia may even try to do this with him to keep him aboard.
Mhm.
Do you ever try to add into a top assistant's deal, not just make them the DC plus assistant head coach, what Zach Alley officially has? He's clearly the highest level assistant on the staff. They have no OC there. But instead of just doing that by name, do you kind of do for the West Virginia fan base, a Dana Holgerson situation when he came in as clearly the head coach in waiting, got so much money, and
That
then
never
budged
works.
out Bill Stewart? But what I'm saying is in this era now where no job is safe and buyouts are so crazy and it's just chaos every single day, and you could be fired within year 1, year 2. No one gets to year 3, 4, let alone year 6, 7, or 8. Do you now try to, when you hire a coach after a year or so, certainly if you have success or you like an assistant coach, like say a Zach Alley, do you try to bring somebody aboard and literally put in their contract they are the head coach in waiting, so that if you get into this scenario, you are locked into somebody and they can't totally have this be a screw job for you? Do schools try to finagle that and almost try to hire 2 coaches in one, that they try to get a guy and then maybe hope there's a top assistant with him and then literally announce that he is the next guy? Bill Belichick tried to do that with North Carolina with his son, but I don't know if that's going to work. Clearly they don't even know if they love him right now. But do we see more of that? That would be like a safeguard situation, that if something happens with the head coach or a school is forced to remove the head coach because of just pressure from boosters who really still do run the whole ship, you have the head coach in waiting. And do they have to get sold on that guy? How much does that guy make? Does that guy want that, or does he want to put his name on the open market? That's something to also think about. Do schools want to do that or do they not? But do we see that coming up more often? We saw that decades ago a lot more. We haven't seen a lot recently. Do you get that now because of how many coaches got fired? And you also, George, what we never used to hear either, and it of course makes sense because of all these coaches that got fired in succession, but you are hearing prominent coaches around the country speak out on how unfair this is. It almost feels like there was a fraternity of coaches that are starting to make it clear, hey, we already lost power because of the transfer portal, and if we sneeze at a kid the wrong way, he can screw our program. Now there's one window instead of 2 that gives us some power back, but we don't really have the power we did before because of NIL. Some of these players are making more money than us, certainly quarterbacks, so we lose power there. But maybe we're losing even more power because coaches are getting fired left and right, even at successful programs. So now we're speaking out more. Rich Rodriguez, I don't know any connection to James Franklin, but he spoke out in multiple interviews very much against a quick trigger that was offered to James Franklin in the middle of a season, making it very clear he doesn't like mid-season firings. His situation there isn't so great. But Pat Narduzzi has spoke out. Pat Narduzzi, the rival coach to Pitt and Penn State, he made it very clear he does not approve of how Penn State handled James Franklin. You mentioned Nick Saban. He said on game day, he literally said, James, you won't say you were treated unfairly. I am saying you were treated unfairly. He's not in coaching, but he's a part of the fraternity and arguably the leader of that fraternity still. That's also interesting, that it almost feels like these coaches are in a way freaking out that, hey, our leash is so short, we have so little power, even the older coaches, that now we're speaking out for a brother and then we maybe don't even like that much because just if he can get fired, oh man, I'm not as safe as I was yesterday.
I don't have sympathy for Nick Saban, who continues to espouse old viewpoints like that, and who
he also admits to breaking rules in the past.
Yeah, and who got his friend James Franklin on the program that he's a part of every Saturday as just kind of mea culpa window dressing type of thing. So that was more propaganda than it was actually revealing of anything. I'll add
definitely not revealing. No, James Franklin never reveals anything. I could have told you that was going to be like that.
And I'll add to that we haven't seen. We've seen something similar on the men's basketball side, less so in terms of firings, but where you've had very prominent coaches, and of course basketball is a little bit different, where consistently older of a group of people. We had Bruce Pearl, who just took a team to the Final Four and decided this offseason, no, I'm going to leave.
Right.
And he has decided to go into television and got a broadcasting deal.
Yeah. I mean, some speculate there might be a scandal brewing.
Fair. Yeah,
because that's what he does. So, like, if you hear a scandal tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. That's why he's bouncing. But
Jim
yeah,
Harbaugh, same kind of thing.
He's still young enough. He just
Tony Bennett at UVA.
That's the good example. That's a good example.
That was, mere days before the season, a mere week before the season was going to start. It's like, nope.
Under the old portal rules. So he's
under the old portal rules. Yeah. So, and Maryland's first-year Maryland coach, Buzz Williams, has been, in coaching now 30 plus years, kind of made mention of that he's seeing it be a strain on the industry and how much tougher it's making it to do the job the way those guys have always done the job.
I mean, Bennett basically admitted that. He pretty much said that's why.
And adapt to this changing landscape. So it's interesting to see how that'll play out. How some of the stuff will play out with basketball too. Will we see more of these legendary coaches? Name guys like Matt, even though teams have been good recently, Matt Painter, Tom Izzo, Greg Gard, in the Big Ten. Will things change among will things change in basketball as it has as much in football in terms of universities willing to pull the plug, especially at a basketball favored university than a football one. So
yeah, and we also are seeing these coaches realize that in this era, and just look at the top 5, top 25, you don't need to be at a blue blood or a historic program in order to have a great job and have sustained success over many years. Curt Cinetti went from being in rumors for Penn State almost immediately, himself obviously a great coach of the year last year, took Indiana to the playoff, has the Adidas connection, and quickly signed an extension to stay at Indiana. He turned down a historic blue blood type program within his same conference that, George, if this was 5 or 10 years ago before this era, and Curt Cinetti went from a group of 5 where he had success to then Indiana level where he gave them the greatest season ever to then a Penn State, he would have definitely taken the Penn State job. Everybody else would have taken the Penn State job. You would have said, well, the resources are this, the money is this, the job's better. I have a better chance to win the national title there. He now is literally able to say, I have a better chance, or at least an equal chance every year in and year out, certainly this year, but just in the future even, to win a national championship at Indiana. That, for anyone who doesn't know, Indiana, as we speak, is 3-11 in bowl games all time. 3-11 in bowl games all time, and he legitimately feels they have a chance to win a national championship that is equal, if not greater, than, say, Penn State's chance. That shows you the era we're living in, that if you put the money in, if you have the resources, if your donors wake up, if the money is there and you're willing to spend, it does not matter the history of your program. You can go ahead and win. Again, I cover West Virginia. They're potentially embarking on the worst season in program history, certainly of the modern era. And Oklahoma State is another one. We mentioned them firing Mike Gundy and ending his 20-year tenure. The two most historic programs in the Big 12 are the two worst right now, the present day and maybe what their future says. And that is, again, indicative of this era. It doesn't matter what your history says. It matters the money that you have and what you're doing with it. You could even have money. Oklahoma State has money, but if you're not doing the right things with it, then you're screwed as well. So
Indiana's an example of that because it does have a well-heeled donor base, a very vast, hundreds of thousands plus of donors.
They're putting money in
alumni,
now, but they've had great
alumni. And they have the vehicle to officially, legally on the up and up.
I guess I'm going to roll my eyes because you would imagine they were. I mean, these schools were doing it illegally before. Why did they?
Sure, but a school like Indiana didn't necessarily care to do, skirt the laws like the SEC has. Right. Now, hey, we've got the legal avenue to do it, and they can hand Curt Cinetti essentially a lifetime contract to finish his career.
Yeah, at his age
in Bloomington. So
and
to them.
And what I would like to see happen. This is what I would like to see happen that would really speak to that even more than Curt Cinetti, who's older. Because the other sales pitch for him, obviously, is you can have a statue at Indiana, even if you don't win national title. If you just keep getting in the playoff and win 10 games a year, regardless of your strength of schedule, he's going to get a statue there. Whereas Penn State, you're always following Paterno no matter what you do, and you're living in that shadow. So it makes sense. And if I was him, I would have made the same decision: money, competitiveness, quality of program, and he's going to get a statue there. It actually makes the Indiana job arguably better. Penn State's job now, you get there and you don't win, you don't win the Big Ten within 2 or 3 years, George, you're going to get fired again. They're clearly going to rattle through coaches because they set a standard that James Franklin, making them a 10-game winner every year, despite their schedule being easy at the beginning of the season, not good enough. They made the playoff last year, not good enough. So Snetti staying there does make sense for him. But what I would like to see happen, as we have this carousel churn, and we're not going to get into where every coach is going to end up and where every program is going to have the Ducks finish as they try to scurry to some type of row here in this carousel. But I'd like to see Lane Kiffin stay at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I think if Lane Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, it would speak to what I'm saying even more than Curt Snetti, who's much older. Lane Kiffin is that now sexy, relatively young, even though he's older, head coach that's been around a while, that's having success, that now has proven he can continuously win. He's done it at a program that has not won at this level in a half century. It's been since the 60s that Ole Miss was this good on a regular basis. Even with Eli Manning there, they weren't this good on a regular basis. They have proven they can compete with everybody in that SEC, everybody in that conference. They usually have a game where they lay an egg each year, but they haven't really had that issue yet this year. We'll see if it happens. Regardless, though, he can get recruits and he has resources there. He can win there. He has proven that he maybe could get in the playoff and win a national championship at Ole Miss. Again, something that program has not even dreamed of in half a century. Yes, LSU has the facilities that every program would dream of. Yes, they've won it in this century. And yes, everyone who's a coach there usually does win it outside of Brian Kelly. And that's a great job. Florida, a great job. You could argue it's hit or miss. Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer had great success. It's kind of been a roller coaster ride otherwise, but that's a great job. Maybe he'll take one of those two jobs. He's a career job jumper. He's been jumping jobs for 25 plus years from the NFL to college football and back again. But I think if he stays at Ole Miss, which if I was advising him, I would tell him to do, I think it's just as good of a job as those jobs right now in this era, then that would speak to you don't need to be at a blue blood even more, and you can do it anywhere if the donors fully buy in and you have a quality program with the resources. I don't think he needs to leave. I don't think he needs to leave to get 10 wins every year or get 11 wins every year or be in the playoff. As we speak right now, as long as they don't blow it, they should be a freaking playoff team even if they don't win the conference. That's how good they are right now. He doesn't need to go anywhere to get in that playoff. He runs an exciting brand of football right now, gets on national TV games right now, has the best social media account right now in the sport. I don't think he's on the McAfee show right now. I don't think he needs to go to a bigger job to get on the McAfee show or to get his name out there.
And it's like at this point,
standing as a great coach in the sport.
And at this point, like, what are the bigger jobs? He's done the bigger jobs.
LSU would be the job, and it is a better historic job. You could argue.
No, you can. He's done this gallivanting thing when he was younger, between the weird thing where he ended up with the Raiders, the Southern California, Tennessee.
He left Tennessee because a dream job opened at USC.
So no, you've done all that and scratched all those itches. FAU, the rehabilitate his career. He talks. The one thing you would have to get him on is he talks, pretty regularly about how he likes the beach and that type of lifestyle. And in Mississippi, it's kind of water is kind of muddy. LSU ain't Louisiana ain't no different. So the culture, LSU, bigger job, whatever. Yeah, sure.
Well, there's some rumors.
I'm giving them that, but the culture of Louisiana is not that different from the culture of Mississippi. So that's not as big of a Texas. Going somewhere in the state of Texas would be different. Going somewhere in the state of Florida, if you want to go to Gainesville, I could see that.
Yeah, there's some national reports that Florida's interested as well. There were
but no. To your point, he's built a nice thing here at Ole Miss, and he can be he goes to Gainesville. He is one of a pantheon of people, of the Steve Spurriers, of the Urban Meyers, and etc. that have done it there. The same thing that happens at SC. You do it in Oxford, in the same league that you've already shown you can have and recruit players to, and can be a force in. He could be governor of Mississippi if he wanted to.
Sure.
There's no need for him to leave Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean the only reason he would leave is because, and what advances the LSU job separate from winning recent titles, but just makes it a better job. There is certainly still more money there. And you could even argue more money at Florida, despite them not having really won big in a while. So if he gets persuaded by just a gigantic bag that he cannot turn down, and Ole Miss can only get him to a certain level, they have money, but not nearly to the level of LSU. And if you look state to state, Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country. So again, there's donors and there's rich people who can be fans of these programs and put money in all across the country. I mean, I've even on the West Virginia beat, I've articulated many times that I think the whole argument of, well, West Virginia is a small state is an excuse that I think is invalid and used too often, even by the program. Ken Kendrick and McAfee don't live in West Virginia. If you're talking about money from the state, they're not in the state. They don't count for those.
No, you
numbers.
don't need money from the state proper. You just need money with people connected to the state.
Right. Well, but that's what I'm saying, that when somebody says, well, our state is small, so we don't have enough money, I'm saying that's not a valid excuse for not having the money, because you just need money in general. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
Sure.
Right. You can have people connected outside of the state. So I'm applying that with Mississippi and Ole Miss, because they could argue, if they want to do that type of excuse, that we're in a poor state, so we don't have the money of LSU. But I would say you have the greatest coach you've had maybe ever. You're dealing with your greatest success maybe ever. They need to find a way, if it's about money and he gets a bag offered by Florida or LSU, they have a poor state. They have rich people all across the country. You just said it doesn't matter where the money's coming from. You just need to get the money. They need to find a way to get near the number, even if they can't match it. If Lane comes to them and says, I have this wild offer from LSU or Florida of $200 million for 10 years or whatever, and I'm ahead of Zignetti's number, I'm not saying they got to get exactly there, but they got to be able to come back at him and say, okay, what if we get you to 170 and you're already doing it here? They got to try to show an effort to you're going to have to pay him more to keep him, clearly. But I just don't want it to be a scenario where Ole Miss doesn't even compete to keep him and they just let him go to a bigger program. In this era, it doesn't have to be that way. Indiana, again, is that example that if you find the money, no matter where it comes from, you can compete, and they can get it. There are rich Ole Miss alums. Doesn't mean they live in Mississippi right now while it's a poor state. But I would like him to stay there. We will see what happens. It's very hard to predict the mental, waning of Lane Kiffin and where his mind may take him. He is a career job jumper. I don't think he needs to go anywhere. And George, you mentioned that if you would go to Florida, and even if you win a national title, you'd still be in the shadow of Spurrier and Urban Meyer. And while that would be true, if you project to the next 5 years, just off of where we are right now, you can make an argument that Ole Miss will be a better program in the next 5 years if they keep Lane Kiffin, in comparison to even if he goes to Florida. It's like Lane Kiffin on Florida or Lane Kiffin on Ole Miss, you can make an argument that Lane Kiffin's resume would still be better at Ole Miss the next 5 years, rather than try to do something new with a new system and a new culture that may not work. And George, he could end up having a scenario that happened to Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly, people forget as much, and I do want to get this out there, as much as I think he's an a-hole and he deserves everything he's getting and he had to go, he never was a fit at LSU, but he was at Notre Dame for a long damn time, won a lot of games there. They were in the national title game. He only lost to Saban in a dynasty. They were in the CFP multiple times. He had them on the cusp, and Marcus Freeman took them even further. Credit to him. But Brian Kelly saw the writing on the wall and then basically chose to leave for another job, which is why Notre Dame fans and several other reasons hate him so much right now. But, he left before they could fire him. You can make an argument based on what's happened here only a couple years in and he's out, that he should have fought tooth and nail to freaking stay at Notre Dame. He was in a great situation that he fit at there. Like, he never fit LSU, but the fit is very, very important. To me, I don't think Lane Kiffin fits LSU. I don't think he fits Florida. I don't think he even fits Florida State, or he certainly doesn't fit Penn State. Yes, it's not a beach, and he loved USC, and he wanted to be there and leave the SEC at one point, but I think he fits Ole Miss weirdly. I think he fits that vibe there.
Yeah.
I don't think he needs to leave, and I think the fit would be weird at other places. But again, if he does leave, that makes this even funkier. So I guess as we round things out, do you have any predictions on where any of these schools go or where any of these coaches go? And then the other end of that is, do you have any other predictions on jobs that continuously open? Because we may see more open mid-season before it's over, and then of course when the year is out.
It's funny watching the message boards, and take that with a large salt lick, not just a grain of salt, but like a huge block of salt. A lot of people seemingly would be willing to buy Luke Fickell out of Wisconsin to go have them coach their program. Yeah, is he not a good fit in the Big Ten? Sure, specifically because he tried to mold an air raid spread offense style into not only a league that doesn't really do that, but also a program that doesn't really do that.
Sure, very weird for Wisconsin.
What was going, and now he's on his what feels like 5th different quarterback in 3 seasons,
and so his success was that Group of 5. It was a Group of 5 level.
He should not return to Wisconsin, whether on his own volition or on the universities. So I do think Fickell will end up. There's still enough cachet around him based on what he did at Cincinnati to see him end up somewhere at one of these jobs, from as low as Virginia Tech / Oklahoma State to maybe as high as Florida.
That's still odd to me, because if you compare him to Scott Frost, they both had the Group of 5 success, and then Scott Frost had a horrible run at Nebraska. He had to go back to UCF, even though now they're in the Big 12, but he had to take a step down. You're saying that he would go take a step up when he's had just as equally.
There's enough people that still apparently value his. Yeah, I don't think Fickell would have to. He could slide into another P4 job. I don't think he's going to have to go down to the American or something at this point. Or Cincinnati's in the Big 12 now, so. And his success at Cincinnati, helped obviously elevate that program, as we know. So, yeah,
but I mean, even going to like a Big 12 job would be a step below where he's at. But I mean,
in theory, but it'll still be still be P4.
If Frost wasn't from UCF, I wonder where he would be. That's a bit of an anomaly, because he's going back to the school.
It's an anomaly in both ways, that he went back home and just couldn't live up to the expectations back home. Speaking of back home, specifically that home of Nebraska,
right.
Are the Husker fans out on Matt? I know it's year 3 Matt Rule and things are supposed to click, but they've had some winnable games in there, and games that they should win.
He doesn't win big games.
More decidedly that they had. The team is talented, talented team. They played Maryland. I've talked with people there in Omaha and whatnot. It's a talented team. Raiola is a talented quarterback, though he's kind of prone to some, flipping.
I thought this would be the year for Nebraska.
I thought it would be as well. Rule has so many deep ties to Pennsylvania. I know that's the obvious whatever choice.
So I'm going to put you this way. If that was going to happen, I think it already would have happened.
You can't do it mid-season, Mike. Like
you would get reports or something. I mean, I mean, that's the entire Penn State beat right now. I mean, of covering the coaching search.
I don't even think you get reports. You get reports toward the end when the thing is about to. We'll get reports in next month, late next month.
Matt Rule's already talked about it publicly.
Yeah. But that's what one says publicly, especially in the coaching industry.
Well, no, I'm not saying I'm taking him at his word. I mean, he cried when he was talking about how much he loves Penn State. I don't think he would turn down Penn State if it was offered him, especially if he thinks he's going to get fired at Nebraska. Sure. But what I'm saying is, to think that Pat Kraft would not be able to have a deal with somebody before January, I think is incorrect.
No, it'll be before January. It's just not going to be now.
December. I mean. Regardless of whether it's announced, I'm saying that there could easily be things that are done. I don't think Pat Kraft is just sitting down waiting for this season to end.
Whoever Penn State is having conversations with, they have had conversations with that person's representation and or affiliated people. Conversation.
Right, but that's out there in the national media. There are people reporting on, not me. There are people in the national media reporting on.
Nobody announces a deal for a head coach in October to take a job 2 months from now when the season's over.
No, I didn't say it would be announced publicly. I'm just saying they could have it already done.
Sure. And
that's what I'm saying.
Done's a strong term, because then you still got to wait for the guy to coach his final games, and maybe your perception of him changes then.
Well, if your perception changes, I'm not saying announce, but I don't.
You lose leverage.
The point of firing somebody early is to be able to get out in front of this coaching search. Otherwise, you would just wait.
No, exactly.
And actually, the buyout number for Franklin would have came down if they would have waited until the end of the season.
No, 100%.
To do this now.
Penn State has candidates. Penn State knows who they are interested in. And you wouldn't have the framework, you'd have interest and perhaps numbers, but nobody's going to present a framework to anybody in the month of October. So
I'm not saying they're going to publicly announce a framework of a deal. I never said that.
yeah, but you said they should already have a deal done.
I'm saying I said they could have a deal done before it is announced, before the season is over.
Yeah.
I did not say they have it done now. I did not say that
You
they
said
would
they
announce
should.
it tomorrow. No, I said they should be further ahead than they are. I mean, I know for
nobody
sure
knows
they were interested
nobody knows how far ahead they are.
well, I know for sure they were interested in Cignetti at one point.
Yeah,
But
that's over.
right.
So,
Well, what I'm saying is that, yeah, they already kind of got egg on their face a little bit. But my theme was that if Matt Rule is offered, I don't think he turns it down. I'm not saying
yeah,
he knows
I agree with that.
offered. I don't think he turns it down. I also think it's unfair if Nebraska would fire him if he is not offered, because while it's a program that has a storied past, the turnaround that he had to employ there was incredibly difficult. And I did think he'd be further ahead at this point, but to expect him to go ahead and be contending for a Big Ten title after how bad they were only a couple years ago, I do think is a bit unreasonable. I get we're in an unreasonable era, but I think it's definitely unreasonable. He doesn't win big games. He doesn't win ranked games. His rank record is like 2-23 or something horrendous against ranked opponents. So it's worse than James Franklin. So quite frankly, George, Penn State fans I know don't even want him. So it's almost I don't even think they'd be celebrating. I mean, we're talking like that'd be the big hire for them. I don't think that's true for a lot of Penn State fans. I don't think they want him. I think that many of them maybe wanted Cignetti, but quite frankly, I think the Penn State fandom is pretty depressed on what they're hearing from the national media in terms of coordinators they're looking at and people that they maybe would get and how the search is going right now. I don't think the fandom believes that this is going well or that they're thrilled, even if they were out on James Franklin. So there's a little bit of a freaking out going on from just the Penn State fan base alone. But Matt Rule is going to have some attractiveness to him. I don't know if he gets a job besides Penn State. Like if Penn State does not want him and he doesn't end up there, I don't know where else he would go. But if I had to bet, I wouldn't even be shocked if Nebraska keeps him if he doesn't end up at Penn State.
Yeah.
Because again, they're in the middle of this. I don't think they force him out now.
No. I think to be clear, I think the onus
mid-season.
I think the onus there is on Rule himself. Does he feel that with the collection of people he's assembled, that he is unable to get Nebraska over the hump in a new expanded Big Ten, and based on tepid support of him and the job he's done so far with said talent, would he consider leaving? I don't think Nebraska fires him. I think fans are probably, Big Red fans are notoriously demanding, and they want to be back in a place of prominence and believe they can get there.
Well, they're an unreasonable fan base. I mean, that's what
sure. There's some truth to that. But I think it would be Rule leaving on his own volition, not that the university would fire him. So
yeah, I don't think he would leave for any job besides the Penn State job. And the only thing that I do take him at face value for, just because
he wouldn't leave to go to Florida.
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I think see, again, I think you don't need to job jump to just what you believe to be a better program in general in this era. And
I agree with you, but we're living in a weird way of thinking now. So,
well, I mean, again, if we were living in the old thinking, Carousel would have taken the Penn State job. He wouldn't have signed, for sure. He wouldn't sign an 8-year deal. I know for sure Penn State was interested in him. And if we were living 7 years ago, he would have been mutually interested. He was not, clearly, by signing that extension. And I think he made the right call. But what I'm saying is that is a new way of thinking to say Indiana is a better spot for me. And there are a myriad of reasons why, but I think that his thinking could trickle down. And when you think about the Florida job, it's not that it's a bad job at all. It's a good job. But will they give him the leeway that Nebraska's already provided Matt? Forget the fans. The program has provided Matt Rule leeway. Will Florida provide that leeway? Is he going to get? You can't get only 2 years at a program. So what I'm saying is, if I'm Matt Rule in meetings And this is why I maybe would turn down the Penn State job if I was offered. I would say to them, you just fired a guy who won a Rose Bowl, won a conference title, and was in the playoff last year. I want to know the answer to this question, Pat Kraft. If I end up not getting in the playoff in the first 2 years because I have to redo the recruiting class and it's just freaking hard in year one, no matter where you are, if I don't get in the first 2 years, am I fired? If the answer is yes, that's not a better job because the pressure could screw me. Whereas at least at Nebraska, I don't think, or they shouldn't be doing a mentality of if he's not in the playoff this year or not in the playoff next year. Like if next year at Nebraska, George, this year has been a little under than what many thought they would do. If next year at Nebraska he wins 9 games and they don't make the playoff, they're still going to keep him. They're not going to think that's the end of the world. At Penn State, if you win 9, you're done. Probably year 1, you're fired based on what they expect there. So to take one of these other jobs, even if historically it may normally make sense, and Nebraska certainly has history they can argue even above Penn State, but just in general, it's a big risk. And I don't think I would do it. If I was Matt Rule, what I was going to say also is the one thing I do believe him on, when you mentioned don't take, the press conferences at face value, I don't believe anything a coach says, but I do believe him on that he does really care about Penn State and they tug at his heartstrings. He was literally crying when he was talking about Penn State. But job to job, I'm not sure it's that. It's obviously a good job for the resources, the money, and with the prestige and how they usually have a bar that at least wins at a certain level. But you're not going to get the leeway that James Franklin got. You're not going to get 12 years from now on.
3 to 4 year.
None of these jobs are. Rich Rodriguez is not going to get 6 years that Neil Brown got.
No, correct.
He's not going to get the. I tell you right now, if they don't win 6-7 games next year, I don't think he's getting year 3. So maybe year 3, but he's not getting year 4. And Neil Brown got year 6. People were arguing, whether or not now he should have got year 7 for crying out loud. And of course, the fan base wanted him gone in year 3. But that no coach is going to get that leeway that these coaches got even a few years ago in these old hires. So to say that Matt Rule would jump, I don't know. And I also don't think they're going to fire him. No. Separate from Lane Kiffin, I guess he'd be that younger, sexy coach. But I could also argue that there's holes to poke in Matt Rule's resume. Again, he doesn't win big games. He wins at a certain level. You could argue he's maybe overrated, quite frankly, even though I do think he's a really good coach. What are some other jobs, though, that you think are going to open that could potentially throw a monkey wrench into this? And I add that part in because I don't know if there's another one that's going to throw a gigantic monkey wrench in.
No,
there are other jobs that may open.
Wisconsin isn't a wrench, as we've already talked about.
Like North Carolina, I don't even know if that's a wrench. Is that
that
value?
It wasn't that sexy when it was open.
No,
and they fired. They could have had Mac Brown and kept Mac Brown around, and they chose not to.
They didn't want to keep Mac Brown, but they gave him some time. And I mean, his resume there was so. But
so you start looking. No, there's no man. No, all of the big, the ones. Sarkisian at Texas, I think, is fine.
Now he's fine. Yeah, I think he would obviously that would be one that would throw a monkey wrench. Yeah, but
Lincoln Riley, SC.
See, that's the weird one for me. I don't think they're going to fire him, but it's weird they don't want to because he's been there enough now. But then
also there's still like a very, very outside chance that they could, play their way into something.
No, I understand, but they didn't bring him in to be barely playing their way.
I know. Yeah.
They brought him in to win conference titles and be a CFP team. So what I'm saying is he's underachieved based on the standard there. Yeah. I don't think he's going to get fired, but I'm just saying that it's weird the way they're handling him, almost in an old school mentality of giving him time, whereas these other schools are giving no time. So that's interesting. But if USC would open, see, I guess I'll disagree with that. If hypothetically, if USC would open, that would throw a monkey wrench in. That's a good job.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I didn't. Yeah. If it becomes open,
I don't think it's going to be open. But if it is open, it would throw a monkey wrench in. That you could argue because the stadium they play in isn't great, but outside of that, it's a great job. And you could argue whether or not it's a better job than LSU, Florida, and Penn State. But I could argue it's the best job. So that would throw a gigantic monkey wrench in. Wisconsin maybe would throw a monkey wrench in, and then
not really.
I mean,
if if the Buckeyes don't win a second consecutive national championship, will Ohio State fans fire Ryan Day again?
Well, if in the future of his career, if he loses to Michigan but wins national
They
titles,
lose
is
to
that ever
Michigan
gonna
and
be
win the national
accepted?
title again. They're
Right,
still
right.
unhappy.
I mean,
So.
well, I mean, Wisconsin, the monkey wrench, I guess, that Wisconsin would throw is it would really hurt the searches of, say,
It would take a job
Virginia Tech.
from somebody.
Like,
Yeah.
it would move up the pecking order, and it would not be at the bottom if you're
Yeah.
going to rank the jobs and the quality of
Somebody
the
that's looking at Virginia Tech would perhaps choose to go to X, Y, Z.
100%. I'd rather be at Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the only other, it's you kind of think of the off the board. Mike Vrabel is ensconced now in New England with the Patriots. I don't see him coming back to college because they're having success. But again, there'd be a precedent. Nick Saban, Steve Spurrier, others.
Well, I mean, if maybe Ryan Day is fired, I mean, that's always been brought up. But
yeah. Does Chip Kelly want to get back in and go back to UCLA?
He said he's done with the mess of the transfer portal in NIL. He's publicly
no, but like they're crack addicts, man. They can't stay away.
But he could have been in it. He could have been in it already. I mean, he chose to not be in it.
Yeah, and another, not necessarily definitely not a wrench, but Shane Beamer at South Carolina is interesting. Yeah, they seem to be out on him.
Campbell at
Matt Campbell's name always comes
elevated. Up. He's a great coach. That program has never been good until recently.
Yeah, and do you wonder what's Rocco Beck? Year 3 now. Do you wonder, they were ranked preseason? You've kind of watched some other people come in there and take your stuff. Houston, Utah, in that league. Have you if you're Matt Campbell, have you hit that ceiling? / are you
at
still
Iowa State? Yeah.
Are you still sexy enough to other bigger programs that might want to have you come in and do that?
I mean, there are people that want him at Penn State. He's not a sexy hire, but there are people that want him there. He is a good coach. I think he'd be a good hire.
Yeah, he was a sexy hire. Would have been a sexy hire 2 to 3 years ago, and so now here you are, and they're not even ranked.
I think he'd be a good hire. I just don't think he wouldn't steal headlines, but I think he'd be.
Yeah, that's why I said 2 to 3 years ago.
I think he'd be a good. I think he'd be a good hire, and I think he would. I think he'd at least win to the James Franklin level. I mean, he can recruit, he can win, but. Because winning at Iowa State is very, very hard to do. I mean, even in this era, they hadn't won a conference title since 1912, and now they're vying for one. But
yeah,
I mean,
is there a path where Shane Beamer goes to Virginia Tech to avenge his daddy?
Well, here's the problem with that. That's not a good job.
If you get fired, it's. I agree with you.
I mean, I could argue North Carolina's a better job. I could argue that's.
I agree. Yeah, I do not.
Again, I've said this before. If West Virginia, now they're not going to fire Rich Rod, but West Virginia's a better job than Virginia.
Yeah,
Virginia
I agree.
Tech cannot even recruit in their state, and they haven't even been able to beat the other historic programs that have been losing in recent years.
Virginia Tech has to figure out, like a lot of these programs do, how much do you want to be in this? Do you just want to have football and have 80,000 people come to Lane Stadium and sing Enter Sandman and jump around and then go home? If they wanted to do that, they would have. Or do you want to contend in a very weak ACC where Georgia Tech and Virginia, which have Georgia Tech, good program, Virginia's kind of skirted through here, but those are your top 2 teams in that league right now, and then Miami.
Well, but I mean, that's the point, though. If Virginia in Virginia, forget
they wanted to fire Tony Elliott.
No, but Virginia's in Virginia. That's the point here. Virginia Tech's major problem, and they have money issues, but their major problem is they do not. When the daddy was there, when Frank Beamer was there, they were cleaning up in Virginia. Nobody else could sniff those players. Not even Maryland could get them. They would get all the top Virginia players, and they would be great. Now they don't even get a lot. Now they don't get a lot of the Virginia players. The Virginia players go around the state, but they don't go in the state.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if Virginia can get enough players to be able to win in your league, then you should always be better than Virginia.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, that's their first measuring stick. Is you
should always be better than Virginia, but they haven't been able to pull that off in a long time.
So if Shane Beamer is for some reason out of a job because the SEC is wildly irrational and South Carolina thinks they should be contending for conference championships, and they decide to move on or find somebody that wants to pay whatever a buyout is for Shane Beamer at Columbia, does he then, mea culpa or make amends? Not that there's amends to be made, but go back home to Blacksburg and coach where his dad.
Yeah, I mean, he would get fired in 4 years, probably.
Sure. Yeah, we can't get to the friggin' next coaching search. We're talking this.
No. What I'm saying is that that's no. The point of it is why I would not advise him to go there, despite the connection.
That's fine. That's fine. We're not having. We're not having that discussion.
We're
having the discussion that Virginia Tech is an opening, and if he were to get fired at South Carolina, he's immediately the top candidate at Virginia Tech. They're trying to drag Bruce Arians out of coaching or out of retirement and playing golf to come back down there.
Well, Bruce Arians is the one who said publicly he's going to put all this money there that I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, he would be connected because of his dad.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that if he cares about his own individual career, I would stay the hell away.
That's sure.
Because it's a job that I'm projecting.
Yeah, you and I agreed on that point. That's a conversation for another show. The show is trying to fit the puzzle pieces into the.
But the reason why is that's why he might not go there. It's not a good job. That's what I'm saying.
You say it's not a good job for him. His dad coached there, and in theory, if he's out of a job, he's looking for another one.
Oh, I have a question then. If his dad never coached there, would you put him there?
No.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the friggin' Scott. We just had the discussion. Scott Frost went back to Nebraska, and it didn't work. Probably what happened at Virginia Tech. That doesn't mean he ain't gonna try. Like, come on.
Well,
come on.
But I mean, he's better off
the drug man. Like they can't quit it. It's chronic.
He's better off where he is. I wouldn't fire him in the first place. He's better off where he is.
That's fine. I'm saying if you asked me to throw things out here, so we're throwing things at the wall here.
Yeah, I'm just saying that all right. Here's the actual
determine if he's fired or not.
Here's a legit question on him then.
Yeah.
What if Belichick is removed and they have trouble looking for candidates because that could very well much be possible, and he now has to decide between North Carolina or Virginia Tech, both looking for him?
I would move.
See, what I'm saying is,
me personally would choose North Carolina, but
that's my point is that if the only
he will never be allowed in the state if he turns down Tech.
But that's what I'm saying. I think is a little unreasonable because
sure.
you're if the
this is an unreasonable sport run by unreasonable people.
If the only thing, I don't think it's if Belichick is removed.
Yeah,
I do believe North Carolina may struggle to hire the next coach. They're not going to get the major guy. So my hypothetical scenario, I do not think is that far fetched because they may go down to a scenario where Beamer is kind of their candidate that they could talk to, and it's a similar job in a way. I do think it's still a better job than Tech just because Tech can't win the recruiting battle in their own state, and at least UNC can do so. But maybe he would be persuaded by the father connection. I am just saying, if I'm him and I don't have the father connection, I would probably pick North Carolina over Virginia Tech. Maybe I wouldn't have done that 10 years ago. Maybe I would do it now.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be interesting. But if Lane Kiffin stays put, that also changes the dynamic of all of this, because I think one of these bigger programs from the national reporting thinks they're going to get him out of there, whether it be LSU or Florida. If he stays put, that means those bigger programs have to look elsewhere. And we've also seen in recent years, George, going to Ryan Day again, these major programs do not, when you're a certain level of a program, you don't need to hire a splash guy to win. The only time we've seen programs recently hire national champions who already had a ring was Ohio State bringing in Urban Meyer after we did at Florida. And when Saban got hired at Bama after winning a championship at LSU before, it's very, very rare. It's very, very rare. Usually coaches get elevated to jobs, but usually you're not hiring an already proven national championship winner. That's why, like, Penn State fans, they want a guy who has a better resume than James Franklin. That's hard to get. That's not easy to do, especially when Cinetti's already said no, basically, to you. So I think I could predict a lot of these programs, George, whoever they hire, the fan bases are going to not like the hire. I think in a lot of these cases. That's going to be
100%.
Especially if Lane Kiffin stays. Now, wherever he goes, that fan base will probably like his hire. But especially if he stays,
the carousel is so wild that you're going to have colleges that think their job is better than it actually is. Maybe get a diluted or a lesser candidate because there's going to be an upward vacuum into all these major prominent jobs.
I mean, if you're a job that is not a top level job. So if you are the next Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Maryland that you cover, again, as much as I think Lockley should go, if you're at that level of a program, you maybe would sit down and say, this off season, of a coaching search, and this coaching carousel is too effing crazy.
Yeah,
and I'm not to the level of competing with those schools, so I need to sit this one out because I could do worse. And then next year, you hope there's not going to, literally speaking, be 9, 10, 11 jobs that are open, including several high money jobs, because you're only going to get a certain level of coach when your jobs that are potentially open are open, like a North Carolina, like a Virginia Tech, or again, like Maryland, if it would become open. But you maybe have to sit down and say, this is just too effing wild.
Correct.
So maybe, 100%. I mean, maybe even Virginia Tech even regrets the decision. I mean, they're not, they lose to Old Dominion. They probably got to do it. But if they don't get Beamer, who the hell are they bringing in? I mean, so maybe you're worse off. And
and that's kind of
something to think about now.
Another, similar ACC school, the case with North Carolina, where your administration is in the way. Virginia Tech's problem is that they can't seem to get aligned on what they want to do with football and how they want to invest in it. North Carolina, the aforementioned Bubba Cunningham, favorite of many Mountaineer fans, if they gave this weird deal and relinquished all this control to Belichick, I'm not sure you want to work for somebody like that that does that. I forgot a name, as I mentioned, as I say ACC here. In terms of shaking, I think Dabo's safe. I think they're fine. I think we're fine there. Mike Norvell would be the other, I think, big name if there's a domino to fall before the end of the season.
I think he actually should go.
Does it? He's because of how bad that slide was last year, and he survived it. And then the little fluke start they had of beating Alabama this season appears to be, nothing more than window dressing.
No, but you lose to Pitt before they got going. I mean, he suffered some rough losses.
Lost to UVA late.
Lost to UVA. I mean, they're far from where they should be.
Stanford.
Florida State is forget Virginia Tech. Florida State is a program that they should run through the ACC and own that conference.
Yes.
With the resources they have there and what that program is.
And the state they play
should
in
be
and the
able
talent they can get there. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have another ACC school in Miami that's doing well, obviously, that's competing for recruits within the conference. But in the ACC,
Miami's private, Florida State public, in theory, lower barrier to entry.
It should be. Weirdly enough, though, if you look at the recruiting ranks of the last 30 years, that doesn't bear that out, because there's a lot of kids that just want to go to Miami.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But so within the ACC, Miami, Clemson, and Florida State should be the top 3 programs every single year. Obviously, Clemson's had their horrible season. They've taken a dip, but Dabo didn't really want to adapt to the transfer portal in NIL. That's the only reason why I'd consider firing him, is if he would sit down in an offseason meeting, George, and say, I'm still not willing to adapt to things. I would eventually be like, Dabo, we're going to, build a statue, but hell, we're in this new era now. We can't do what we were doing before. Florida State and Miami. And Florida State just a couple years ago should have gotten the playoff. They didn't get in. They got screwed. They would have been in if it was a 12-team playoff. They were able to kind of buy through last year being so bad because of the year it was 2 years ago. They can't do that again. And again, with that program and the resources there, because I go off of what the expectations should be, South Carolina should hold on because they're doing better than they've done in recent years. I don't know if Mac Brown should have got fired or he ousted there or forced out.
Brown should not have gotten fired. No.
Well, you think more of the tenure than I do, but there's a ceiling of what you're going to do there. I mean,
yeah.
He won like 8 games. He then had 6. I think he had one 9-win season. He never got a 10-win year. Like they wanted that big double-digit win total. But North Carolina football hasn't been great since the early 80s, basically.
Exactly.
So there's a ceiling there they should be fine with. Now, when you bring in Belichick, maybe they got more love for the program and more attention, but obviously that big egg on their face. But there are certain programs that they get too knee-jerk and they make these wrong decisions, and they get a worse scenario. You could argue Penn State shouldn't have fired Franklin, maybe. He had a great recruiting class coming in. He was cleaning up in the Whipple again in Western PA. Yeah, you could say it's front-loaded because of a week out-of-conference schedule, and there's a ceiling there with them. Maybe they're never going to be Ohio State. But George, Cinetti's not coming. We're talking about Matt Rule, and we're debating Matt Rule. His resume is worse than James Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
So, they could certainly do worse if you're worried about big games and top 10 wins. Matt Rule doesn't have any of them. So you could do worse if you're some of these schools.
Yes.
So that's something to think about as well. And I think even something for these coaches to think about, that it's a risk to go to some of these schools because the leash is so short that if you're at a place like Lane Kiffin is going to be able to retire at Ole Miss as long as he keeps having these years. You go somewhere he's risking being fired if he doesn't elevate within 2 years. So why even? I think he's fine, but where he is. But that just makes this crazy. But yeah, some of these programs are going to end up with worse coaches than who they fired. I mean, that's very, very possible.
100%.
And
you won't know it until it's too late. So
you won't know it until it's too late, and then you'll do exactly what I was saying about bringing in. You'll be doing this again in 2 or 3 years, maybe not even 4. Maybe you'll be doing it sooner. And again, I have been the foremost, I guess, table slammer that Loxley should go, but I don't know what the hell Maryland. I don't think now. I mean, Maryland.
They're not going to move on that this year.
They would be the worst job available out of all the jobs left. I mean, you could argue over Virginia Tech, but they'd be the worst job.
Virginia Tech.
I mean, you could argue with Virginia Tech, but I mean, that's all you're debating. But I mean, the only problem is that's another conversation that has to be similar to Virginia Tech, though. As you've even said before in your coverage in here, that if they want to be serious in football, then there's clearly a ceiling with Loxley, just like West Virginia decided there was a ceiling with Neil Brown. Obviously, I mean, I do believe, as much as Neil Brown deserved to go and had to go, George, even as a West Virginia fan, if Neil Brown was still there this year, they'd be better than 2-10. I'm not saying he'd be winning anything, but they just had a 6-win season. He would have brought a lot of those players back. They would have probably be a 6-7 team, 6-6 team, 7-6 team again. They got rid of him because there's proven to be a ceiling that you're never going to do better than the Mayo Bowl of 9 wins. I believe there's a ceiling with Loxley no matter where the hell he is. He's proven that for years.
Correct.
But I guess it could be worse.
Yeah. No.
But he is also the absolute anomaly in general that, I mean, how many coaches have been at their same school longer at this point?
Yeah, no, it's shorter list, especially in that league. It's basically just like Kirk Ferentz.
Which is, I mean, I mean,
Kirk Ferentz is another one. Iowa just always feels like it's in this purgatory, but he's not going anywhere till he dies. I feel like so.
Yeah, they should probably move off of him as well because hell, Dabo, I guess, has been at Clemson longer than Loxley, but yeah, I mean, that's a program that also is kind of floundering. I just meant in college football. I didn't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Iowa's another one. They're not even in rumors though. No one even tries to.
No, it's just
that's not even a thing. I mean, they're not even in rumors.
Color me, and again, I don't have any insight to what goes on in Iowa City, but they moved on from Fran McCaffrey last year in basketball, and so they're doing the same thing West Virginia and other schools are doing. With a whole new roster, and Drake's former head coach, I believe, is their head coach now on the basketball side. So, and Fran McCaffrey was a legend there as well. I mean, Lisa Bluter, Fran McCaffrey, Kirk Ferentz, like 3 legendary old school. It's as old school as a college kind of program you can get.
But that mentality doesn't apply to football, which is a bigger deal.
That's what I'm telling you. I was like, they've moved on from Fran McCaffrey. Maybe would somebody finally be like, all right, Kirk continues to do this thing where they'll win 7 to 8 games and they'll go to the Music City Bowl, but maybe once in a while, it's the route for them. And 2, it sounds very simplistic, but the division thing in the Big Ten, the route for a Northwestern or Wisconsin or a Iowa in a 14-team Big Ten to get to Indianapolis and play in the league championship was pretty easy. And it maybe put in my opinion, some lipstick on a pig of how good somebody had a season when you're going up against
100%. Purdue,
Ohio State and Michigan, and then just getting walled.
And they were the 4th best team in the conference.
Now, Indiana good. Indiana undefeated. Ohio State undefeated, and now you got Michigan and, Illinois and these other teams trying to claw their way into it. So no, it makes it look a lot more difficult at an Iowa, at a Wisconsin to do what you used to do, because the system was kind of set up in your favor the way the Big Ten's divisions were divided.
Yeah, I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, as recent as 2 years ago when Purdue played Michigan in the Big Ten title game, they were actually the 3rd or 4th best team in the conference. Ohio State finished as the 2nd best team in the conference, but they didn't get to play in the Big Ten title game because of the old format.
Yeah.
That's just ludicrous and doesn't work in this era anymore.
And then Purdue lost 2 games. Won 2 games last year.
Yeah, I mean, even that old system, the ACC used to have that. That allowed Narduzzi to extend. He was before he had the Pickett year. He was bragging about getting blown out to Clemson by 30 points in an ACC title game. He actually got to 2 appearances,
which is why all of them are clamoring for expanded playoff.
Because he was he was actually the 3rd or 4th best team that year, but they had a damn division they were able to win. So I mean, and that's another thing that you could argue that actually hurt West Virginia all those years, that they never had division format. The
No.
programs never had division format. And if they did have a division format 10, 15 years ago, maybe they would have got there one of those years because they
in
only
a
would
top
have had to
heavy
beat
small
three schools.
conference where they had to play everybody. Yeah. And they
But I mean, they could have, if back in the day, if there would have been divisions, maybe they go ahead and make the Big 12 title game and then lose to Oklahoma still, but they at least get there, and then they could argue they got there because they won. Because you know how the divisions would have been.
They would have stuck them with the Kansas. Yeah, the Kansas, the Oklahoma, and
together, and they would have.
Yeah, they'd have stuck them with the Kansas teams and Iowa State. And who am I missing?
They could have, and Holgerson would have cleaned up with some of those if that was the division. I mean, he had usually 8 wins. He had one real bad year, but people slander his tenure a lot. If you would average 7 to 8 wins, he would at least been in the damn race every freaking season, just off the division format. So that didn't exist and hurt him and hurt that program at the time. But yeah, now I guess the last thing here, as this has got so crazy that, again, I do think Maryland would do worse if they do move off Loxley. As somebody they're the only program that we've not mentioned that could open because they're not winning enough from what they were supposed to do entering the season. They've gone through a losing streak now, and they had a great start to the year and now has slid. Hypothetically, if they keep on losing and then they get pressure from donors to is there any scenario they would fire him? And if they do fire him, how do they proceed?
The 2% chance would become a.
I mean, they can't lose out and keep him. I mean, that would be the
2% chance becomes closer to 50-50 if they close the season and start off 3-0 and then close the season 0-9. That would be the only thing that would actually do it, because there's 2 games in there against Michigan State. Hasn't beaten Michigan State's looked very bad, even with Aiden Childs, who's got some talent but needs some work. Michigan State hasn't won a game in the league yet. They're 0-5, and then Rutgers, who also has.
Yeah, Maryland's schedule's not that hard, which is why this year should have been a bigger year than it is.
Yeah, on the whole, yes, but no, they play Indiana, Illinois, Michigan this month, so this is the hard part of the schedule, and then the teams that they should have beaten and had leads against they didn't beat. But yeah, no, if it goes from less than 5% to 50% if they lose out. That's the only thing that's different. But no, the athletic directors has as recently as last week once again reiterated his public support for him, and he's got, as I always thought he would get this year, and then the pressure will be on immediately out the gate next season.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why any Maryland fan should believe that next year would be better, though. That's the only thing. If this was not if this was a normal year where Penn State and these jobs were not open, and it was a normal year, then I would be screaming that Maryland looks like a clown circus by keeping him for another season. But again, because there's no room, I don't know.
You can't get in.
There would be no one to hire.
Yeah.
But looking at the overall, they've had some tough games recently. But if you look at the overall schedule, especially with a top recruit, this should have been a 7-8 win year.
So that's the weird paradox, is that still
this is not a hard schedule overall, even though you have
yes and no. I had him at 5 before the season, mostly based on inexperience. Now the problem was you came out and you showed that you're better than your experience.
Yeah, Washington played above that expectation.
Would believe Washington is as good as a top 25 team, and you led them 20-3. And gave up and gave up 24 straight points to them to lose. You led them 20-0, and they came back and scored 24 straight points.
But blowing games has to be on coaching, though.
Yeah, exactly.
But that doesn't support him staying.
No, I get that. I get that, but that's where the problem lies. So no, before they're performing expectations just on the numbers, but when you look deeper than numbers, it is a bit of a miss there where they could have been a 6-6 team. There's still a possibility. Likely far-fetched, and we'll see how it looks after.
And Loxley also is. I think. I mean, as you know, I'm big on holding people accountable for what they say. He was saying this year would be more than what you're saying it was supposed to be, though.
No, not initially.
He didn't put a number out there, but he was saying words like teasing this recruiting class.
Yes, definitely teased the recruiting class.
Well, if you're teasing a recruiting class, would I not, as a fan, infer that that's more than 6 wins? Holy shit. I mean, that's not impressive.
No, because everybody knew what was facing them. Hey, we're bringing in a bunch of freshmen. Let's see how it works. And he knew the talent that he had, but no, for how he normally operates, this was a more reserved assessment, though, while still while still saying that people are going to find out the talent level of these people. Malik Washington is shine, but obviously he needs some work, and we'll see how that looks in this offseason, which will be a pivotal one for them.
You also could argue, while he's looked good, that because of what's happened, it devalues a 3-0 start a little bit. I mean, they didn't.
100%. They don't play anybody. Yeah.
They didn't play anybody, and they only have one. I mean, West Virginia is the worst team in the country. They have literally the same amount of Power 4 victories.
Yeah. We're having the same conversation we've had 15 times. So
I'm saying it depends on how they finished. I'm saying that if they end the year with a total of 6 wins, but only 2 of them are against Power 4 teams, to me, I would fire him if it wasn't because this crazy.
At that point,
5
no. At that point, with 6 wins, 3 of them would have been against Power 4 teams, and 3 of them would not have.
I said 5 or 6, but yes, 6 would then be 3. But 3 Power 4 wins is not that good.
5, yeah, I know that. 5 and 5 would be 2 Power 4 wins. So
I said 2. I know. I'm saying that if he. You're basically telling me that so what?
Winless. You already asked me and I already told you. Winless, and it goes to 50%. The athletic director is new, and he's committed to him and the program multiple times publicly and privately.
No, I'm saying if there was not a chaotic circus. I'm saying that in a normal college football year where Penn State does not act
different story, yes. Yeah, different story.
That's what if you read back the tape, I originally asked if we were not dealing with a circus, basically, what would he have to accomplish?
Yeah, no, you threw that in at the end. You first asked me, what did you think my chances were? And I gave you the percentage chances.
No, yeah, well, this is a different question. They're 2 different questions.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm telling you is that if there's not chaos and you're telling me 6 and 6 is good enough there, they might as well shut down football. It's the same thing at West Virginia. Like, that's nothing.
You're done. You talk the same thing in circles 15 times, and it's there's no update, and you just continue to talk in circles about it. So.
No, I'm telling you that because of the chaos, I wouldn't fire him, but he's easily the most overrated.
I would say that's part of the factor. New athletic director is part of the factor.
I'm just saying that where we differ is if there was not a chaos, if I was the AD, I would be pretty much.
And the percentage goes up. Yeah, it goes up more than 50, regardless of wins or losses, regardless of whether. Well,
I'm curious. Actually, that'd be my final question. Where would that percentage be? Because that's kind of what I was asking.
70.
I'm actually curious because I'm saying
I don't have a good percentage for you. He is fine unless they lose out. If he loses out, there is pressure, regardless of the environment.
Well, no, he should not lose out. I think everyone would agree that if he loses out, he should really resign. It would be so insane.
Yeah,
but he's not going to lose out. But he's not going to lose out. That would be insane. I don't think he's going to lose out.
You say insane. I don't. There's a non-zero chance of it happening.
If he loses out,
they've got it. The 2 easy games I just gave you are on the road. They're at Michigan State and they're at Rutgers. Those are the 2 easiest games left on their schedule. It would not surprise me.
Rutgers could lose or beat anybody. Like, they could easily lose.
Sure.
I mean, Rutgers is not. Sure. Rutgers is the same shit that
as always
we cover.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
fire Greg Schiano while you're at it.
Sure, they probably should. They're not going to get a higher ceiling, but he losing out would be ridiculous. I am the most negative on his tenure.
I know,
but I'm not saying he's going to lose out. I'm on the record saying he's not going to lose out.
I know. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised as you would be if it happened.
Just because of the succession of how I am going to then stamp me down that if he loses out. I understand how chaotic this is, and I would still consider not doing it because it's so chaotic and you won't do better. But if he loses out, the end of the season press conference would come after a closed door meeting between me as the AD in which I told him, I no longer like you. I no longer support you.
Yeah.
You can come back if you want.
That's why I told you it's a coin flip. It goes to a coin flip.
Like, I would be a dick almost. Like, that would be insane to lose out. As much as I rag the schedule, he shouldn't lose out.
I'm looking at. I don't have the number in front of me. I got it somewhere on my phone as part of my other notes. They are abysmal in November under him. The only team they consistently beat in the month of November is Rutgers. I think there's a win against Nebraska in there somewhere, and that might be it.
Michigan State's beatable.
I know that. I'm just telling you, it's on the road. It's the last game of the season. I'll give you the cadence here. It's Indiana homecoming at Illinois, program that he was an assistant at. Yeah, sure. Knows Brett Bielema very well, knows the program very well. Program Maryland lost to 2 years ago when Illinois was a piss poor team and the worst in the Big Ten. Came in the worst in the Big Ten and lost.
Yeah.
Then they're home to at Rutgers, 2-game road trip. Rutgers coin flip, fake rivalry. League likes to consider. Home to Michigan, who'll probably be ranked at that point. The week before Ohio State, once again, because they always play Michigan or Ohio State the week before the game. And then they're at Michigan State in Ford Field. Forgot to mention that point. At Ford Field for some reason in Detroit.
Yeah, I know it's at Ford Field, but you could, I guess, argue that that's better than being at their home stadium.
I would agree with that. But road game the week of Thanksgiving. And at that point, if you're 3-8, does the team even care at that point and just quit on everybody?
Sure, but the opposing teams may not care either. I mean, Rutgers isn't going anywhere.
No, I get that. Yeah. So the easiest game on their schedule is at a neutral site in a professional stadium as the last game of the season, which makes it a little less than easy, but still on the paper easy. And their second easiest game is in Piscataway as the second game of a 2-game road trip.
But what I'm saying is,
I will not be surprised if they lose out. I will not.
I am going to figure they win a game. But what I'm saying is, if he would lose out, and you take the totality of the season into account,
yes,
that you didn't want to do earlier. But if you take the totality of the season, it would be incredibly legitimate to be done with him. And the only argument for keeping him would be that the carousel's too crazy and we don't like our program enough. Pretty much. It would almost be the only argument at that point. Like he cannot lose out.
The three factors are the same regardless. It's just their influence changes. So the three factors are the carousel's crazy. That means less if they lose out. Athletic director is new. Holds a little more weight if they lose out, even though he's publicly supported.
Yeah, because that's another reason why I thought this would be more of a year he's under pressure than you're saying, because the new AD normally signals that.
This athletic director has been more community relationship building type of thing than an activist AD that comes out and tries to mold the department in his image.
Okay, well then I'm just going to say, and this is me being serious, as a fan, I wouldn't like that as an AD in my AD.
But
if I was a fan of Maryland football, which I'm not, obviously.
Different story, because they've needed the community relationship aspect of it repaired.
Is there not a way, though, to have both? Would you not agree
that may manifest itself. He didn't take the job until mid-July. So
well, no, I mean, if it's going to manifest itself, but you're just saying that's not him as a person in terms of what he's best at, is what you're kind of saying.
So far it's been building a coalition, including Diana Sabo, who was the athletic director of Utah State that hired.
Right. I'm just saying that. I mean, obviously,
it looks different. It's a department that looks different. The third factor is recruits. Do you risk losing the recruits?
But that always happens all the time.
That happens.
That happened in West Virginia, and they had to let go Neil Brown. That happens all the damn time. You can't. I don't think you can, in this era you can't.
But those are the three factors. Those are the three factors right now. And they vary. And the craziness of the carousel, new athletic director and new athletic administration that includes multiple people involved in that decision making process now. And then the third factor is recruiting. So that's where you stand. The fan base is already out on. Writ large, the fan base is already out on.
Yeah,
they'd have fired him after the Washington game. So the fan base is already out on him. Now it comes down to the people in leadership and the factors that go into their decision making.
I also do believe the fan base expected more out of this year than what you're saying you previewed as the season. And
only after they saw the level of talent. I'll give you the caveat.
Yeah, but you could, and you've even agreed on the point of that maybe the talent got overrated nationally because the competition was not as great as their losses were against. I mean, beating up on the beginning of the schedule.
No.
People...
But they weren't like squeaker type of wins.
No, I know they won big.
Yeah.
I'm just, and I'm not. And I even actually said publicly that if they would have won the next 2 games, I even would have ranked them. But what I'm saying is that but that doesn't mean. I mean, there were fans on social media that were arguing they should have been ranked after week 3 when they hadn't beat anybody yet.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, I think not even that though. I mean, you could even go what was said on game day. I mean, Pat McAfee said they were the surprise team of the season for him, and they hadn't played a Power 4 yet. You could argue that they got overrated nationally, even if they weren't ranked.
No, that doesn't make any sense
before they got into
either.
the schedule.
No. Nobody was overrating the team nationally. They are rating the players, specifically Zaire Mathis.
No, I do believe Pat McAfee's comments were overrating the team.
It's one person. Good job. No, but nobody was overrating Maryland. Yeah, you heard something on game day and thought it was a point, and it's not. So that's all.
No, I think McAfee, what he has to say definitely is a point. I don't think.
You heard one person. You said nationally. You heard one person say something on game day, and you thought it was interesting enough as a point, and it's not.
You can say Pat McAfee's points are irrelevant if you want to argue that his.
No, I'm just you heard one person say.
I said that the overall collective of the fan base I don't think was as down. It's not McAfee's not a fan of the program.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that. I mean, I dealt with people the second he said that. There were all Maryland fans that were livid that I brought up the strength of schedule and thought that I was unfair to the program.
Sure. Okay.
I do know some Maryland fans in my personal life that thought they were going to actually have a better year. I can't imagine that you go into year 6 or 7 with a coach, you get your best recruit, and then 6 wins is good enough. That just seems wild. Like in
a year when when the entire roster is overhauled and most of the coaching staff, then yeah, it's perfectly acceptable or expected.
And when I say that the fans expected more, I think you thought I was saying more. I'm saying that I think fans expected 7 wins, and you're saying 6 would. Like, I don't think any Maryland fan.
Once you saw the level they performed at, once you saw the level they performed at, 100%.
Yeah,
defense leads the nation in takeaways. The edge rushers are going to be All-American players, not this year, but at some point in their careers, whether that's
I was never saying that. Even McAfee was saying they're going to go ahead and be a CFP team, but I'm just saying they haven't even got to what was said at that time. I mean, they've so if they slide so far that they keep losing out and they go from what was said then to lose all the games since then, that's fireable offense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
we agree on that.
I mean, I don't. I mean, 50-50 go to 60%.
No, you're asking me to prognosticate. My opinion is that yes, it would be a fireable offense.
Yeah, well, I know.
Does that actually happen? Goes back to the 3 factors I already told you about.
Yeah, I'm saying that if they work off of what your prognostication is, in my opinion, that's insane. That's why my overlying theme is that they would come off as a circus program. I didn't say George Gerbo would be in charge of it, but it would come off like a bad program if they're going to let a guy lose out and then keep him on. It's not like it's year 1 or 2. I mean,
I got you.
He's 20 games under 500 in his career.
I got you.
I mean, but I don't know who they would hire is the only issue. And then in this, it's almost like I would be upset if I was an AD or a fan there, because I'd be like, damn, the coaching carousel got so crazy. It almost screws me.
It's a cycle that they would behoove to stay out of. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just. And then separately, I would really wonder what Loxley's value is around the country.
No, it would be.
He'd have to be a coordinator or go.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
He would not take another head job and probably not leave the state of Maryland or the region. He loves the region very much.
Yeah, I mean, maybe an assistant thing, or he would do some other role, or I cannot. Yeah, I mean, but although, I mean, to me, he hasn't done enough there to warrant another position with the program. But if they want to be nice and put him somewhere else,
I mean, smaller program, D2 or something.
No, I was making a joke that like he hasn't done enough at Maryland to warrant, if he says I will agree to retire, that they would make him some quasi position within Maryland.
Oh, that's a fringe theory.
But I don't think he warrants. Say, what has he accomplished to do that? Don't give me the nice guy and connect him to the state.
No. I was just gonna say on the field, not much. Build relationships, recruits well.
Yeah, I was saying that mostly in jest. But if you're saying that he may no longer be a head coach and he would just work, he would even go down to a lower level and he might just want to toil around and would care about his career that much. If that's the case, maybe he would take some bullshit job. I mean, I don't know. Like I wouldn't. I don't know. I mean, I don't think he warrants that. But if he would say, "Okay, you're firing me. I'm going to retire from coaching." I mean, maybe
no, he's still young enough. He would do something.
Yeah, he's not 80 years old. I mean, but I don't. I mean, but his value just would be rough. But I don't see how you lose out and then it's not a more serious conversation.
Yep. Yeah. Correct. 100%. That will put a nice bow on this edition of the Howitzer and Buzzsaw Show. A reminder to find us wherever you get your podcast. Just search Howitzer in your favorite podcast app, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, and more. Also, shout out to Hyphen Podcast Group, Kellen B. Hyphen Conley, whose music you hear right here each and every time on the HBS. Check him out at hyphenuniverse.com and hyphenpodcastgroup.com and on social.
You can find us everywhere on social at Mike Ostie 11, at Gerbo 3, at Howitzer Buzzsaw for the show handle. Again, if you can't find us, you're just not trying hard enough because we are available everywhere you get your podcasts, of course. And my last little aside is people should be held accountable for what they have to say, whether it be coaches in a press conference, whether it be what program set as their standard years ago, or whether it be Pat McAfee on game day, because I think he said something that was borderline factually incorrect and has never had to rebut it, what I was attacked for. I mean, to say that I got to see a Power 4 win in order for me to be going as big as he went on Maryland. But let's talk about him again, is all I'm saying. But maybe hold coaches accountable, maybe hold coaches accountable, maybe hold players accountable, maybe hold ADs accountable. And that's I'm living that right now. And it's not, you think I'm beating up on Maryland, George, you should read up on the West Virginia coverage. I have borderline call people liars. I don't think I'm holding people accountable all day. I mean, all the stuff that's coming out now as reports that Rich Rod's complaining about. You were there at the Pittsburgh Caravan. Ren Baker, did he not say, "Oh no, we're good. We're good"? They're not good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's either a lie, it's either exaggerating the truth, or it's not. Things happened after the fact. But I'm all down for holding people accountable. Rich Rodriguez, since I cover him every day, is number one. I don't think he likes when I hold him accountable. I don't know if you saw, he really disliked the question about, is your program further back than UCF, who literally spent less money than you and is a worse situation. He told me that I'm Mr. Negative and that I go down a negative way, I believe was the quote. That you're just going down a negative way, Mike. You're always negative, apparently. But how many rich donors do you think are flooding UCF with money in Florida when you got Miami, you have Florida State, as we spent the whole segment talking about, and you lose to them by 30 points, and you stand outside a bar in Pittsburgh. That George can actually attest that I'm 100% right on. You stood right next to me when Rich Rod next to him, yeah. And I asked him, what should the expectations be? He said contention in November. And I asked him, some are saying that you went 3-8 in year one and that would be fine. What do you expect? And he said that would be unacceptable to me. Did he not say those two things?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No.
Well, here we are.
So
he's not getting fired, though. It's only year one. He's definitely not getting fired, nor should he be, because West Virginia got to be lucky they didn't have to do this year. Comparison to last year.
The bigger indictment is that he admitted that they missed on the portal, and the people they recruited were not nearly as good as they thought they were going to be.
He literally said he misevaluated.
Misevaluated, yeah.
And you have to admit that.
That's the core response. Besides the actual game planning on the field, core responsibility number 2 is to evaluate talent.
Well, and
your staff.
You could argue that there are always challenges that certain programs in any era are going to have to deal with. Mm-hmm. But the benefit of having a Rich Rodriguez, who I do believe is a borderline, if not is a College Football Hall of Fame head coach for his resume, is that you should be able to overcome a little because you evaluate better than most.
With your
He's
skills.
Admitting he messed up. All he had to do was evaluate, really. Yes. I mean, the money Ren Baker worries about, and he did not evaluate properly. So, no, I think that was a big issue. And again, he's not getting fired, but I think this actually makes sense to end this way. I do think, even more than Loxley, maybe, even though he's been there forever, just because Rich Rod's more prominent, that the coach who will be under the most pressure going into next year with how crazy the coaching carousel was this year is maybe arguably Rich Rodriguez. And I'm not saying I think he would maybe even only get 2 years. That is a short amount of time. But the excuses that have been levied, George, about I got there. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know if you watch all these press conferences, but
I read the stories. Yeah.
Okay. Well, not even just from me, from everybody. If you the excuses of, I got there late, we got there in December, misevaluated, finances, 80 new players, all of that. Those excuses work in year one. They don't work in year two. There's been a whole year to correct the recruiting, a whole year. There's only going to be one portal window now. There's a whole year to have your high school recruits come in, and he said it should be a bigger and better class. There's a whole year to build up the money that you claim was rushed and you didn't have before. Ren Baker.
And you'll inevitably lose people off of that staff, whether they choose to go to other jobs or whatnot. So there'll be some turnover.
Yeah,
in the
that
staff.
happens every year. Win or lose, that happened. Even Brown won 9 games and lost people from the staff. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, if you really want to get really in the nitty gritty for WVU fans, maybe Dante Wright leaving after the Mayo Bowl was actually a problem. The secondary has never been good again. He might have been the most underrated assistant coach on that staff. But yeah, you're 100%. I mean, but I just don't think regardless, the excuses are going to work as well in year two.
No.
Because you're going to be there the whole year and all of that. So I think if they go through, if this ends up being 2-10 or 3-9 or whatever the hell,
has to be a winning season. Can't be a 500 or a losing season. They need to win 7 games next year, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue if 6 is okay for year 2. I mean, the Loxley thing, he's in year 6, 7. Rich Rod would be in year 2. I think maybe he gets 6 and they happen to win the bowl game. Like we could, okay, that could be the 7-6 season.
Sure.
There are some fans that would prefer 7-5, and then the bowl game would be the bonus. But which I'm taking that as kind of what you're meaning by saying 7. You're meaning
correct.
7-5. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The only counter would be that if you could go 6-6 and then get 7 in the bowl game.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
but if it's 4 wins,
no,
like then I wouldn't put it past anybody at that point, even though it's only year 2, because as much as there's not a ceiling, that you want to dream of under Neil Brown or even Dana, it never this bad.
Yeah.
It never was this bad.
No.
It was never this bad.
No.
I mean, even Dana's worst year when they won 4. I had not 2 more wins on this schedule. West Virginia's not winning 4. I'll tell you that. The prediction on the media preview that you and others thought was too negative of a colleague of mine that always is perpetually negative. He had a 4-8, which was the lowest. Everyone else was like 6 wins. I think
I gave him 5. I can't remember. Yeah.
No, I think you might have had 6 and 6. But I wasn't talking about you. I was saying that somebody else.
Oh yeah.
4 and 8.
Yeah.
And we've always joked that literally every year that person has said they're going to be 4 and 8 for like 4 years.
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
But so he's perpetually negative. But that is going to be overestimating the win total.
Yeah.
4 and 8 is going to be better than what the hell this is.
Correct. Yeah. That put a nice bow on this edition of the Howitzer and Buzzsaw Show, where we conquer scandals, offshore gambling, and sports radio.
There should be a lot more betting and a lot more prop bets on these coaches. I don't see as much of that going on. I mean, we prop bet on every damn thing. There should be prop betting on the coaches and where coaches are going to go. But yes, when it's Asinine, we conquer it one day at a time. Stream.